Coming up on This Week in Google, Micah Sargent, am in for Leo Laporte. He will be back at the end of the month, don't worry. But while the cat's away, the mice will play. And that means starting things off by talking actually about Google. We kick things off about Google's decision to cut back on costs. First, by getting rid of micro kitchens, and also by issuing its employees Chromebooks in some cases. But Jeff Jarvis says that's a great thing. We also talk about lawmakers who are regulating social media even when they don't understand it. And we have quite a few conversations about artificial intelligence. I ask the panel some compelling uses they've had for artificial intelligence. And we even get to the Google changelog this week. It's all that, plus the panel's picks, tips, tricks, and tools coming up on This Week in Google.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twig, This Week in Google, episode 710, recorded Wednesday, April 5th, 2023. Jexx Javros. This episode of This Week in Google is brought to you by Cisco Meraki. With employees working in different locations, providing a unified work experience seems as easy as herding cats. How do you rein in so many moving parts? The Meraki Cloud Managed Network. Learn how your organization can make hybrid work work by visiting meraki.cisco.com/twit. And by Miro. Miro is your team's visual platform to connect, collaborate, and create together. Tap into a way to map processes, systems, and plans with the whole team. Get your first 3 boards for free to start creating your best work yet at miro.com/podcast. It's time for Twig, This Week in Google. And yes, I am not Leo Laporte. I am instead Micah Sargent, because Leo Laporte is on vacation. Don't worry, he will be back. But until then, we are going to do This Week in Google in probably much the same way that it's always done, which is we'll talk about a lot of things that have nothing to do with Google and some things that do have something to do with Google. And we will find memes and tweets and posts and other ridiculousness along the way. Joining us this week is Twit host and Club Twit community manager, Ant, battler of turkeys, Pruitt. Hello, Ant.
Don't explain it. Don't explain it.
Oh, man. Look here. So if you want to know what that means, you need to be a Club Twit member.
Turkey's public enemy number one, and Pruitt.
Wow. And
Turkeys
Mr. Sargent,
hate him.
I'm imagining now there's a wild turkey and then it's got Ant's seal of disapproval on the top of it.
Nailed it. And Mr. Sargent, I have to say, as this week's producer, I at least put some Google stories in there for us to talk about.
You did.
I mean, we got to get at least one of them, right? And just hit the quota that we talked about Google.
Yes, I'm actually really excited to cover some Google things so that anytime someone out there goes, I thought this was called This Week in Google, you just point them to this episode and then they have to be quiet.
Yeah, that's it.
So
that's all I got to do.
We'll be good to go. We are also joined by technology journalist and print historian. It's Glenn, the typesetter Fleischman.
Hey, Micah, such a pleasure to be here. Now, I like Leo just fine, but, well, I'll just leave it there. Great to be on a show hosted by you.
Oh, thank you, Glenn. We were planning for this episode, and we knew, unfortunately, Stacey wasn't going to be on this week. And I said, I know we just had Glenn Fleischman on, but I'd love to have him back because we've got a great rapport. So I'm glad you're here with us today.
I appreciate it. If we're lucky, we'll do our folksy frontier voices.
We may
prospector voices. Yeah, might happen. Leftover from other programs.
We are also joined by
He's got it.
The Leonard Tao Professor for Journalistic Innovation at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York, and the Director of the Tao Knight Center for Entrepreneurial Journalism at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York. It's Jeff the Man Jarvis. Hello, Jeff.
Craig,
we need the choir. Where's
Newmark.
I think it played several times.
You went so fast. They couldn't get the Q in there.
That's what it was. I was too fast
That's
for
what
them.
it was.
Oh man. How are you, Jeff?
Good. I too am delighted that you're hosting. I too like Leo, but I really enjoy your shows, and I enjoyed the last time you were on here, and so I'm glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. Well, as Aunt Pruitt promised, we are going to kick things off with Google, and this time we're not talking about bidets going away. Instead, we're talking about Google following through with some other cost-cutting measures. This time, we're going to get rid of some micro kitchens at Google. So I have been, I'm sure at least some of you have been on Google's campuses before. Yep. And while you're there and, you're visiting, if you have a Googler who works there and you get to go around, there are these little places that you can stop and grab a beverage or grab a muffin or grab something to eat or drink. And Google seems to be kind of rolling back on the spending on these different sort of micro kitchens. And I mean, it makes sense. They just announced that they were going to be laying off even more workers. And I think some employees were particularly surprised that this was happening at Google, kind of thought they were holding their breath for a while, thought that maybe Google had pushed through that and got past any concerns about needing to, or in their mind, needing to let people go. And so these cost-cutting measurements came into place at the same time that we've seen some layoffs. So yeah, I mean, I'm curious for all of you, I'm curious to hear your perspective on these sorts of perks that exist at companies, because it has often been looked at as a means to not pay people what they're worth. And
I think it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, go ahead.
The company I used to work for, we had nice little perks like this at the different facilities. And it was good where it was nice to have it there and have some convenience and not necessarily have to worry about going out of the facility to go get lunch and pay extra for stuff that you really don't want. And you had people right there in the house, if you will, that could take care of those little knick-knack needs or what have you. But then at the same time, it also could indirectly encourage working 12 hours like it's like 8 hours, So it was sort of, a double-edged sword. Now, granted, there were times, because in the IT world, you're going to have some long days. You just, it get like that at times. I can't say that the company that I previously worked for really encouraged us to do that, but it was nice that when we had those long days, we had those extra little perks right there in-house. Mm-hmm. But I also get the argument of, why don't you just pay these folks more? And yeah, I agree. Most people want more money more so than they want perks, right?
He says as he picks up his sparkling water and takes a sip. Get out of the fridge here.
Free pizza from
literally. I missed watching Windows Weekly last week because I was enjoying the Twit sponsored lunch.
Well, it seems like after the long working from home period, maybe those perks don't seem as important to people as actual money. And I guess there's that like shared sacrifice idea that if you're laying people off, everyone should suffer a little. The people making on the low end of the totem pole and on the high end. Did Google really signal anything at the top that they were doing anything about compensation? I think it's great when the thing the company says is, I think Amazon did this, maybe it was 20 years ago. It's that long ago when they had their first glitch in earnings after they opened a bunch of warehouses prematurely and then closed them and then later reopened them again. And it was, there's no longer going to be Advil or something like that in the break rooms. And you're like, man, you should stock more of that. Like that's the wrong decision. But it does feel like it's not rearranging deck chairs because Google is not in any terrible financial situation. It's more like they had to do something symbolic, but why? I don't know. It looks like, I'm starting to get these things. Every company is pinching its users a little bit too. And I wonder if this is part of the same trend, just off to the side. I just got a notice from the parking app that we use for parking meters in Seattle. I forgot, it's pay per something, right? Pay to park or something like that, or pay by phone. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we might start charging you in some areas for SMS. And I'm like, gosh, that sounds very Elon Musk. Oh, SMS is eating up tens of millions of dollars. And I'm thinking all the little freebies as users and all the freebies you had inside a company as a worker, are the companies sort of trying to claw those back after many years of providing things because they're trying to chew off some of the expenses that are that are fixed and they want to get off their ledgers.
Having worked at magazine companies, and I have a book coming out in November, I might as well mention it on the air, called Magazine for Bloomsbury. I recount some of the culture that I went through there. And at Time Inc., when I was there on closing nights, because you'd work until 3 a.m. and you were really tired and you had to do all kinds of stuff. So they catered dinner. That was one. They had free wine and beer. They had Pepperidge Farm cookies all day. And you got a limousine ride, not a limousine, but a dark car ride home if you worked past 8 o'clock, which means everybody worked past 8 o'clock to get the car ride home, even in the Hamptons, right? And then I worked at Condé Nast where they had, and also at Time Inc., if you were at Time magazine, a steward in a white coat would take around the liquor trolley. Honest to God. And if people where I was, which we didn't have that because we were day class A, but all the senior editors and up, I was not a senior editor, the senior editors and up could requisition booze for their credenzas. Now, one, they had an office. Number two, they had a credenza. Number three, they had booze in it, paid for by the company, right? And we all, of course, we had expense accounts like crazy. We'd go out to library. There's one guy I worked with the people who would go to Bloomingdale's and say, that couch, I think that's about 25 lunches. And he'd have fake receipts for the lunches, and that's how he'd do it.
Oh, my God.
Condé Nast, we had a beautiful Frank Gehry designed cafeteria, which was subsidized, and also cars anywhere, also flying first class, all this. The point of all this, at some point comes the moment when the piper comes for payment and you don't have the same old culture you had, and you get ripped apart properly. Well, in the old days, they lived like kings and queens, and now look what happens to them. So I think that's part of the problem too, is that it's part of the hubris of something. You're absolutely right. It's one way to get people to work all hours, but it's also a way to say, look how wonderful and special and privileged we are, like other jobs and other companies, and it comes back to roost.
I'll tell you something funny that. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, sir.
Well, something funny about Amazon. I want to say, often we criticize big tech companies for the bad things they do. And one thing they did in the community is Amazon, before the pandemic, was building massive amounts of office space in downtown Seattle. And they intentionally they talked about it, and it was true, I know people who worked there, that they underbuilt the space that you could eat inside the buildings because they wanted to support this neighborhood that they were essentially overrunning. And they helped subsidize some food businesses to come in there. They invited food trucks in. They really wanted workers to leave the building. I mean, it sounds so strange now in the 2020 plus world. They wanted workers to leave the building and go sit in crowded restaurants and support, pour the money back into the community. And it also meant, though, and I'll say this again for them, they didn't want people to work through lunch. They wanted them to leave the building for lunch. They didn't want people to necessarily have this uninterrupted, I'm at my desk. I mean, people did that, of course, but they encouraged people. And if you went out there, I'd occasionally make the mistake of on a weekday going into the South Lake Union neighborhood of Seattle and walking around, and everybody has an Amazon lanyard. I'm like, it's actually working. And it was, again, before pandemic, it meant, I don't know, probably tens of millions of dollars a year is being poured into that. So arguably, Amazon built inside a city, and Google built in a suburb, and a lot of the .coms built in a suburb. So they did provide amenities because they didn't want someone to take like 2 hours to leave the campus, drive somewhere, park, eat, get their dry cleaning. They're like, no, we want to recapture that. But also, if you read about Palo Alto and some of these other places, they were overrun at times where it's just there's literally no seat in any restaurant, no place you could go. The reverse problem is happening now, of course, but there was an intent of a time that's gone by that's not coming back.
Wow. See, there's so many aspects to this, right?
A cult.
Yeah. That, I guess that can be sort of the offshoot of it, is you do then get. I was reading a book, and in the book, it was actually kind of talking about, this was a fictional cult, but essentially the people, as they moved up in the cult, then to become like a higher member, you had to, this is grisly, but have your tongue removed. And the conversation surrounding that was,
Jesus, what do you read?
It's a fantasy book. But the point is,
especially weird. I'm sorry, Mike. I'm going to say this. Especially weird for a guy who makes his living by talking, reading a book for pleasure.
It's a strategy.
Are ripped out.
It's
I don't know.
Strategy book he's reading.
Self-hating to me.
This might be.
But keep going.
I promise I'm getting to the point here. The point is, without the ability to communicate, then they only can rely on each other for any sort of commiseration, but they can't talk to each other about it. They don't have the ability to go elsewhere and talk to other people. It creates this sort of reality distortion field where they all exist in the same place and they have no means of reaching out. They also can't eat with other people. And so that is one of the main ways that human beings, as just what we are, kind of connect with new people or connect with others. My point is, in talking about sort of these groups where you end up eating together, even if that wasn't the original intention, you do start to get this sort of groupthink attitude that does lead to, oh, well, this person stayed later. I'm going to stay later. We're all going to stay later. We're all in this together. We're all a big family. We're all working on this. And so I wonder if over time, Glenn, where you kind of talk about perhaps in the beginning where it was about, okay, we're in the suburbs. We also have to make sure that we keep the city council happy, that we're not getting people who live here complaining because, our workers overrun the community. But then they also see the benefits. They start to see the benefits of having these employees working and eating and I don't know, doing laundry together, and how that can kind of lead to this culture where you just work.
It is surprising that we don't have employee dormitories in America, though. I mean, that is common in many other countries and many industries, including white collar, depending on the country you're in. And I am sure so many companies have thought about, like, let's just build housing for like 1,000 people and you will live and work in a set of connected tunnels.
Isn't that common in Asia?
Well, I think that's in Shenzhen, right? Where Foxconn rather has a huge campus where they offer living. And although to its credit, within the context of many other things, apparently the living conditions are generally pretty good compared to what someone could afford on that salary in the same places. So there is some aspect, it's a patriarchal or a benefactory, whatever you call it. It's like a beneficial oversight of someone's life. I don't know.
Micah, and I'm sorry, I know I'm concentrating on the wrong thing.
Oh no, here we go.
But when you don't have a tongue, how did they get nourishment? And did this go into gross detail that maybe
No, it can get nourishment without a tongue, sir.
I guess you do what Ant does, which is drink protein shakes.
Okay.
Straw-based culture.
I'm just going to reveal the book because I feel like everyone's just going to be thinking about that for the rest of the episode.
All we can think about
the Dresden Files, which is about a sort of modern day wizard. And there's a group of people who essentially work for fallen angels. And in order to make it up into the higher rungs of working for these fallen angels, they have their tongue removed. So,
oh my goodness,
it's so effing weird.
It's very weird.
Let me change the subject if I may.
Please take it away from this.
The other cutback at Google.
Mr. Jarvis, you mentioned privilege a few minutes ago, and it really made me think back with my own personal experience. Prior to working at that nice company that I used to work for umpteen years, I had some pretty crappy jobs when I look back at them. I remember digging graves with my dad.
Really?
I remember doing crappy jobs like that. And so being in the position of being in a nice, beautiful facility that was air conditioned, number one, it was an air conditioned facility. I didn't have to wear ratty, beat up clothes because I knew they wouldn't get dirty and stuff like that. Had coffee machines and a gym and a shower and all of this beautiful stuff right there. It opened my eyes and I was like, I can get used to this. I'm keeping this job. That was sort of the thought that I had. It's like, this is a privilege now. And I don't want to let it go. But yet the other side of that is those 12-hour days could have added up. Mine didn't add up like that, but they could have for some people.
Isn't that always sort of the balance that I think, because I can remember I worked for my school district back in Missouri. And so during the summers, they would have jobs if you were, of age to be able to work for the school district. I would climb up onto the top of the roofs of the school building during the summer and like the hottest time of the year and paint the roofs with this metallic
I did that
paint.
too, dude.
You did that?
Yes.
Yes.
I've done that too.
Goodness.
I've done commercial building roofing with asphalt and some with that nasty rubber tar. And I've done all that stuff too in the summertime. So
yeah. And you have then whenever you do move into something else and it does feel like it's so much of a shift in everything. And so I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is I totally get where you're coming from in terms of trying to find perspective in all of these things, because of course we know suffering is relative and the perspective does matter there. And you also don't like, having come from something like that, working that way and finding appreciation in the job that you have, you don't want to sort of discount other people's experiences in their suffering in that job that you have, because it's hard.
And you should also point out a lot of these companies too, they have tiers inside the companies too. So Google's got all these issues with some people do get the free lunches and others are in different buildings with different colored badges and they don't have access to it. So there's hierarchies within the hierarchies too. And the lowest paid workers get left out of it. Yeah.
Yep.
Now,
however,
yes,
what seems like a cutback at Google, of course, I'm going to consider a major advancement and perk for the employees of Google.
Oh gosh, I know where you're going with this.
The punishment, this punishment, I think, but
it is not at all. It is a benefit. They're going to default to Chromebooks instead of these panty ass privileged apples. Oh, I have to have my Apple. I can't work without an Apple. It's Google. You're working at Google. We make computers called Chromebooks, and you're going to like them.
Well, see,
that's a wonderful privilege.
How often do they make their own, though? I feel like it's mostly the third-party manufacturers of.
It is now, yeah.
They're going to dig out the old ones that they make. You're going to use these first.
Well, if they start making Pixel books again, I'd be a very happy camper.
Yeah.
That was the point I saw in that article where they talked about developers are exempt from this particular rule. So why is that? It's because those Chromebooks are not powerful enough to run those developer tools. And Google has the power to fix that, but yet they won't. So they're stuck with having MacBooks on campus.
I'm not sure that's it, Ed. I really wonder if that's not it. Because you look at friends of ours who use Chromebooks with Linux to program, right? And I wonder if it's instead that programmers are the upper crust of Google and we're not going to piss them off.
Oh, well, compiling apps is a thing. Like Xcode is it's hilarious when you talk to iOS developers and Mac developers about Xcode. And it's like, you need a jet engine of a, fan on the thing. And you're like, you're compiling a fart app or whatever. And you're like, no, we need the most CPUs, all this memory. And then it fails after, and you're like, oh, this is why Apple, there's one argument that Apple had to keep making Macs and improve them because Macs are the only way to have enough processing power to create apps for iPhones and iPads. And I don't think that's a joke. I think in the darkest days a few years ago when it seemed like the Mac was not even very long ago, before the M1, and when it seemed like Mac sales were tapering off, people were saying, and including me, saying they can't drop the Mac until there's an appropriate development environment that works on an iPad or iPhone, but not an iPhone, that has got that same heft, because otherwise you've got a million or however many iPhone and iPad developers out there who can't actually write the apps that makes Apple all that money. So since then the Mac's made a good comeback, right? But there was that point.
All right. The other thing where it seemed like Google was maybe looking for some cost-cutting measures was with Google Drive. Turned out that if you had a Google Drive subscription, or as part of your sort of larger Google package, your workspace package, you had Google Drive access. Even if you had the space on your Google Drive, so let's say it was 5 terabytes or whatever it happens to be, and you'd only filled it up to 3 terabytes, but you had reached 5 million items, then you would see a cap that would come up and it would say, no, we can't put any more files into this. So it was 5 million items or 5 terabytes, whichever's first, right? It may have even been, in some cases, less storage. Now, we talked about this, Ant, on Tech News Weekly on this last Thursday. Or was it Thursday or was it Sunday?
It was Ask the Tech Guys.
That's right. It was on
I had
Sunday.
the honor and pleasure of co-hosting with you on Ask the Tech Guys. How crazy is that?
That was a great time, and you had mentioned that this was in place. Well, shortly after, perhaps even a Monday or Tuesday, I think, Google said, we take it back now. This is not a smart move. But I'm curious, what are we thinking was the behind the scenes reasoning for making this choice? Was it that 5 million items, even if it doesn't equal that storage space, is still too much processing for? I mean, I'm just so confused as to why there would be this cap in the first place.
There's an old programmer's joke, sort of a joke. I remember this from decades ago, and it was, when I'm running the software, when it exceeds more than 30,000 somethings, it slows down. We'll just find the place where it says 30,000 and raise the number, right? Like it wasn't a systemic epiphenomenological outcome, right?
Sort of a joke.
That's what this feels like, though. Google's like, we stuck 5 million in there when that was a hard limit. What's irritating to me, does this irritate any of you? It's not a power of 2. Why is it not a power of 2? It should be a power of 2 minus 1, like God intended, and yet it's 5 million, 2 even power of 10s.
Good pull.
There you go. I've done my old fart routine for you, man.
Thank you. Google said,
I have no answer on that, Mr. Sargent. Like the logic behind it. I'm in your Google and you have tons and tons of resources, and that totally just seemed out of left field.
Google said in a tweet, essentially, and thank you, Scooter X, in the chat, it did it to, quote, preserve stability and optimize performance. And so what I was thinking is, if you've got that many files, perhaps if you've got that many files, then trying to search through those files, if there are that many of them, would be kind of troublesome and would potentially, load down the system. But I mean, they've got all this storage, or they've got all this processing power to run Bard now, so you'd think that they'd be able to do this.
Exactly. You've been bragging about your supercomputer that's better than NVIDIA. This shouldn't be a big problem to sift through 2 million files. Come on, Google.
You're Google.
Gosh darn it.
Just add a few more Chromebooks into the server room, and
exactly.
Especially those ones that Google built itself. They just need to repurpose those.
You're missing some stories here.
Or take some of those old apples they can't use anymore as employees.
Yeah, there you go. And even the little processing chips inside the bidets they're not using anymore could be there as well. I'm sure those have little computers in them.
It is funny, though. Sometimes you feel like they slip the top off the reality glass and you're looking at the raw innards. This doesn't feel exactly like it because, again, the number is a round number. It was hard coded at that. But it's like there's most services, right? People using Google Drive, some people have like 5 files that add up to like 700K, and other people are storing 2 terabytes or something, or 5. What's the maximum? And it's and so somewhere in there, though, usually it means, well, it scales. There's on average people are storing like 50 gigabytes or something. So it works out fine, and you have the resources to devote because you can distribute them across as running a service like this. You kind of know what to expect. So it's weird to have this high-end number that then they're like, well, we can just roll that back. It's something is really peculiar about that to me.
Let's take a quick break. We've got lots more to talk about here on this episode of This Week in Google. If you're just now tuning in and you're going, that doesn't sound like Leo Laporte, you're right. It doesn't, because it's not him. It's Micah Sargent. I'm filling in for Leo this week. He will be back at the end of April. But until then, I do want to tell you about Cisco Meraki, who are bringing you this episode of This Week in Google. Cisco Meraki, they're the experts in cloud-based networking for hybrid work. So that way, whether your employees are working at home, if they're working at a cabin in the mountains, if they are working on a lounge chair at the beach, if they are working from anywhere, well, a cloud-managed network provides the same exceptional work experience no matter where they happen to be. You may as well roll out that welcome mat if you're going, is hybrid work going to be a thing? Yeah, it's a thing. It's here to stay. Hybrid work works best in the cloud and has its perks for both employees and leaders. Workers can move faster and deliver better results with a cloud-managed network, while leaders can automate distributed operations, build more sustainable workspaces, and proactively protect the network. IDG Market Pulse Research did a report recently for Meraki that highlights top-tier opportunities in supporting hybrid work. First, hybrid work is a priority for 78% of C-suite executives because leaders want to drive collaboration forward while staying on top of or boosting productivity and security. But we know that hybrid work also has its challenges. The IDG report raises the red flag about security, as 48% of leaders report cybersecurity threats as a primary obstacle to improving workforce experiences. Always-on security monitoring is part of what makes the cloud-managed network so awesome. IT can use apps from Meraki's vast ecosystem of partners. These are turnkey solutions built to work seamlessly with the Meraki Cloud platform for asset tracking, for location analytics, and more. With that, you can gather insights on how people are using their workspaces. So in a smart space, environmental sensors can track activity and occupancy levels, so that way they can stay on top of cleanliness. You can reserve workspaces based on vacancy and employee profiles. This is also called hot desking. It allows employees to scout out a spot in a snap. Locations in restricted environments can be booked in advance, and they include time-based door access. There's also MDM, mobile device management. Integrating devices and systems allow IT to manage, update, and troubleshoot company-owned devices, even when the device and the employee are in a remote location. Turn any space into a place of productivity and empower your organization with the same exceptional experience no matter where they work with Meraki and the Cisco suite of technology. Learn how your organization can make hybrid work by visiting meraki.cisco.com/twit. And of course, we thank Cisco Meraki for sponsoring this week's episode of This Week in Google. All right, back from the break, and I think it's time to move on to a very good topic, and I'm glad that it's here on the list. And I think this might be a Jeff Jarvis topic, but we'll see. The Washington Post article, lawmakers are clueless about social media. They'll regulate it.
My fingerprints on it, maybe.
Unbelievable.
That has Jarvis written all over it.
Can I hear? I'm ready. I'm sitting in the pew. It's a hard wooden pew. I've got my offering ready.
Does Ant have the button ready? Ant, are you ready with the...
Yeah, let's go ahead and get it ready.
Just checking. All right. See, I've been on the show a little bit.
God, I wish I could get my preacher thing going.
Summon it.
Ladies and gentlemen, hell is upon us. I'm panicking about moral panic as usual. So, a good story in the Washington Post that says that politicians are effing idiots and they don't understand social media. And so the Utah, of course, did this horrible thing, which we talked about, I think, last week before last. 2 state bills that keep people under 18 off social media, which is a terrible thing. It happens. This folder right here is filled with papers I've been reading about young people and social media and how there's this presumption that it's bad for them. This is presumption that things are worse. There's a guy named Jonathan Haidt who writes for The Atlantic, who's writing a book about how the social media has ruined teenage girls' lives. Now, let me tell you, as the father of a not too long ago teenage girl, there's plenty else that ruins their lives. There's a social pressure of the lunchroom is enough to ruin anybody's life if you link back to your own life then. And the moral panic of finding social media as the folk devil that says that's where all the problems come in is ridiculous. It goes back to every moral panic there's ever been around comic books and video games and rock lyrics and books and novels themselves. And so it's just ridiculous. So I'm glad to see the Washington Post, let's give actually credit to the author, Paul Waldman,
very good,
for coming along and saying what's what, that these guys just don't understand it. And they also don't understand young people.
That's what I was going to ask, and I didn't want it to come off as disrespectful. Do you think this is an age thing with our leadership?
Yeah. Of course, you're making fun of old people again. I realize that, Ant, but okay, I'll let you.
I didn't smile that time.
That was good. Very, very smooth action.
Yeah, it is. I read there's a guy named Paul Ferry, Faerie, who collects old headlines. And what's great about his social accounts, both on Twitter and on Mastodon, is that he goes back and the kids these days, he'll find a phrase like that, and he'll find headlines decade upon decade, even in the 2 centuries ago, about the kids these days. And then of course the contrary of that is we must protect the kids.
Right.
Both of which fundamentally insult the judgment of kids, right? Of our own children. There's a researcher I think the world of named Dana Boyd who wrote a book called It's Complicated, in which she says, we got to give our own children some credit and some faith, allow them to learn, recognize they will learn, they do learn, they figure these things out on their own. And so to come along and act this way, I think you're absolutely right, Ann. It's old farts who just don't understand not only social media, but their own children. And I would hate to be.
It's expediency too, though, isn't it? Is that you have a lot of politicians who they know something. One of the most popular things you can do as a school district is float a levy to buy computers for students, or it used to be, because everyone's like, oh, computers, that's the future. Let's do that. Forget about books and teachers and class sizes and the rest. One of the most popular things you can do in certain sectors as a politician is say social networks are the enemy. They're the real problem. We need to regulate them and clamp down on them, and then things will go back to the way they used to be or be better. And if you're people who are progressive buy into that often too much because they don't like the advertising, the targeting, all the negative messages that are given, the reinforcement, they may understand all of it and say, yeah, Facebook, Twitter, etc. are the enemy. And this politician wanting to block it, well, there's First Amendment and other issues, but whatever. And on the conservative side, you people saying it's exposing people to things I don't want my children to see necessarily. It's suppressing voices that I want my children to hear. It's focusing, is changing my child. And so it's what can you do that appeals to both sides? Facebook is evil. Let's impose regulations.
The Pew survey for 2022 talked to teenagers about technology, and the majority of teens say social media provides them with a space for connection, creativity, and support. And young people are finding value here, and in a time when young people are frightened of being shot in their schools, of the climate going nowhere, of young women not being able to control their own bodies. Yes, I'm getting political here. They need someplace, somewhere to go to have an outlet with friends. The Times did I don't think I talked about this in the show. If I did, Ant, stop me, kick me under the table. Okay. The Times did a focus group with middle schoolers or young people a few weeks ago. And in there, people were talking about how it's a relief to be able to go online and mute myself and not feel I have to talk. It's a relief to be able to go someplace where I can be among friends. It's a relief and yada, yada, yada. So I screenshot that and I tweeted it and I said, the kids are all right and they figured it out. Well, the responses I got,
oh boy,
were, oh my God, you can't, how these kids, they're being ruined. How dare you say this? It sounds awful to me. They want to not talk. How dare they? And I said, did any of you think, can you remember the 8th grade lunchroom? Can you just try for a minute to remember getting on the 8th grade bus and the social pressure you were under, all the hell you were under, and be a little empathetic?
My 15-year-old missed most of middle school in person, and I don't think that was a terrible thing. Like, I'm sorry they missed their friends. They realized they were more of an introvert than they realized too, so they were able to flourish in that. So there's a lot of downsides, but there was something where I was like, how do we get this one through middle school? It's like, oh, it was all online. Thank God.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone, Jeff, as a printing historian, as a fellow printing historian, I'm often looking at sources
next to you,
like childhood is an invention of the 1800s in Europe and America, right? Kind of didn't exist. And then it's like, oh, these little humans that worked now have something called childhood. It's magic.
We're reverting to that now, aren't we?
I saw that.
Yeah. The US bringing back child labor.
Look, child labor is all overrated. Their little hands are good at things. In the typographic industry, girls and boys always worked in making metal type because the tiny hands were so efficient. But anyway, you look at any newspaper. I'm looking at train a rat. I'm looking at newspapers also from look at the 1800s to the 1950s, 60s, 70s. Every time I'm looking at something, I'm looking for a particular article about a thing or whatever, and there'll be the headline. Every newspaper, this is going to ruin the children. This new invention called reading. Reading is terrible for people. It ceases them all the memorization, and the children will become lazy.
One of my favorite quotes that I have in my next book next year about the internet, about the dangers of reading, and
of reading.
Yeah, and where the hell?
Who's going to buy that book? Wait, I'm confused.
No, I know. No, it's actually about the wonders of the internet. So this quote from 1795: "My sight is everywhere offended by these foolish yet dangerous books. I have actually seen mothers in miserable garrets crying for the imaginary distress of a heroine while their children were crying for bread."
Incredible.
I can't. But this is just going to keep repeating itself, right? I mean, we're very predictable, us humans. If we look back, I guess, what did it take to actually convince people that books were not going to be the end of humanity? It was time, right? Time is what did it.
Right.
So we're just going to keep doing this over, and then video games. I mean, even today, still people are saying video games are, turning people into bad people. So we haven't gotten through that time yet. It's just in the short term, while it's all going on, good God, is it exhausting?
But I think
go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think you have to agree, though. Here's the big proviso is that social networks are terrible. I mean, they are terrible. Many of them that exist now, and in many ways, and they are bad in some ways for people in general. So are they particularly bad for children? Are they different than other methods children interact? That's something, but we can't argue that Facebook has been, say, an unalloyed good or even a neutral over time, or Twitter, maybe Instagram being the best of them, but it's changed culture too. So I think my starting point is more, it's very hard to regulate things in a free speech culture, right? We have a First Amendment, and we have commercial corporations have lots of rights to speech. There's a lot of freedoms that allow them to work in an unrestricted fashion, which is good in many ways. So how do you regulate something that's producing bad outcomes in many cases where they don't seem to want to put any kind of bar across their own bad behavior? So, I mean, I think that is the background for me. And then you examine where kids' roles are in that more specifically. But I don't know. Is it good for adults?
Kids also get to escape their parents, which is important.
Very important.
And by the way, Glenn, we met in social media. Social media is not terrible. It's how we begin.
I was going to ask. I was about to do a follow-up to ask if you agreed with that statement, Jeff, because it does seem like something you wouldn't.
Well, I was going to say that from a devil's advocate standpoint, you brought up that survey, Mr. Jarvis, but there's
devil's advocate. Who do you think you are, Leo Laporte?
Somebody's got to be Leo while he's
somebody's got to be Leo.
He's definitely not me. I'll say that. But there's just as many surveys out there that are saying the exact opposite of what the survey you pulled up from Pew, right? Yeah. Because children we've spoken about it on this show several times, how some children are getting suffering from depression because of what they're seeing on TikTok with the sensationalism of living my best life and all of this fake stuff from influence and things like that. So it could go both ways.
Yeah, but
right?
So I had to buy this book for the next book called The Plug-in Drug, 1977 by Marie Wynn, about how television is terrible and is going to ruin everybody. Mm-hmm. And then she revised it over the years because new things came along like the VCR and the computer and video games. She said, well, it's all the same because you're looking at a screen. It's not what's on it. It's the screen. She said certain specific physiological mechanisms of the eyes, ears, and brain respond to the stimuli emanating from the television screen, regardless of the cognitive content of the programs. It's a one-way transaction.
Wait.
So that was what was terrible about television, right? So now the problem
our sleep expert has.
No, this stuff is interactive. It addicts you. Right? And that's bad.
Have you seen the video of Bjork describing television?
No.
So I think she must have read, I think Bjork must have read that book because there's this ridiculous, I don't think we can show it. It doesn't have music, so maybe we could. I don't know. But Bjork basically is sitting down. It's like an interview for a news program, and she's describing television, and she's talking about how every single little tiny pixel is shining light into your eyes, and that is making it so that it is hypnotizing you, and it is changing everything. I'm basically doing the video right now.
I love this.
You've got to watch
Bjork imitators
won't
is not
take
a big
that down.
field. You're the top.
The specialized industry of Bjork impersonation.
Anyway,
A lockdown.
you should, for your book, you've got to listen to that Bjork interview. I'm telling you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will.
Everything rots children's brains because parents want control over their children, and I think
Exactly.
there's speaking as one of multiple parents on this panel, it's always a battle. I think there's a battle of like ego abnegation where we have to give up some of ourselves to let them be who they are, and some parents don't do any of that, and some parents do too much of that, and finding that balance. So when you have another force in there that you can say, you can't have access to the the written word or the screen or social media, it's a tool for parents' nervousness to express itself too.
Yes.
Well put.
I want to say I saw something about Miss AOC joining TikTok, and it seems like that could be something to end up coming back to bite her in the end. I don't know.
I think
but I get the premise. What's that?
He's great at social media.
She and her team.
I mean, I get her premise of basically joining TikTok when the rest seems like the rest of the country is like, no, we need to kill off TikTok. We need to ban TikTok. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Jarvis?
I think it's very smart. Jamal Bowen, who's a really good representative. I'm not sure where he's from.
Oh yeah, I love him. Yeah. Yeah.
U.S. representative from the great state of New York. How can I forget? 16th district. So he's been out there saying this TikTok stuff is way overdone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're seeing a techlash to the techlash happening here, where some representatives are recognizing, especially Democrats, if we piss off all the kids, Art, old man Joe, we like you, Joe, but you're even older than Jarvis and Laporte, and you're not helping our future here by hating TikTok.
Especially because there are a number of people who, I mean, just even casting aside the people who genuinely have found joy by going and using that app every day and experiencing new stuff, even not thinking about them, but the number of people who have lived out the long-lived American dream by becoming a content creator on that platform. Those not only are we taking away potentially, they suddenly don't have this revenue stream that they had, and a lot of these folks are not sort of thinking in the long term, and so it could be detrimental to them. But it also then results in those folks specifically having this vendetta because they took away this tool that they had been using to make a name for themselves. And we had just seen where some of the COVID, the positive information and the true information and the sort of instructions and campaigns being spread on the platform in a good way, we've seen the success that the platform can have in terms of getting information to the youths. And so to lose all of that, and as you're pointing out, to look incredibly unhip and not in vogue is not great.
And shutting off the speech of young people. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty soon you'll see well, no, I'm not going. Never mind. I was thinking about inventing a meme there, but it's a meme that I don't want to exist. So
people without tongue.
Good.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, people with, exactly. You know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I still have my stance on, our country is picking on TikTok, because of the China connection. Yet at the same time, there's just as much craptastic and disgusting content rolling around on Facebook, rolling around on YouTube, that slips through the cracks of moderation, and you never really hear much about it as much as we're hearing, well, China. Hey, take care of the house first. That's
Hey, I've got moral purity here because I don't trust the Chinese government's involvement or interaction with TikTok. I don't trust TikTok, but I also killed my Facebook account 3 years ago, and I stopped using Twitter when Musk took over. So I have a tiny bit of moral high ground.
And you need a new sign with halos on it. More purity.
Clearly, I have to work on that this weekend.
Fleischman will do the purity.
Yeah, I'm just slightly less of a hypocrite than other people complaining about TikTok.
It's like a punch card, right? You have to walk around constantly, and it's like if you are less of a hypocrite than the person next to you, then they have to punch your card. And if you get enough,
it's such a good place thing. It's like, oh, I had almond milk. I can't. Now I have to take that off.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Right. It's like
I'm killing bees,
Facebook,
so now
but I'm still wearing blue jeans that are dyed with indigo from. Oh no.
So then they punch your card instead of or you have to punch their card instead of the reverse. So somebody else is getting, I don't know.
Do you remember Cory Doctorow had this concept called Woofy back in, I think it was Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom, like
what'd you call me?
Years ago. Woofy, WHUFFIE. And it's exactly what China is implemented as a social like quality score, more or less, although their version is more negative. But it was kind of in a, Cory Doctorow dystopia, and people engaged with each other, and you earned woofy, and woofy was sort of your social score, and the higher social score you had, so it was kind of a way you could get things, and people would work with you and whatever. And I realized I need to work on my woofy. I'm off Facebook. I'm not using TikTok. Get that woofy number up.
All right, I'm gonna start keeping track of my woofy. It's sort of like a modern karma.
It was like Clout. Just remember the Clout with a K.
Oh, Clout. Yeah. I remember.
Remember Clout?
Oh,
I hated it.
Me too. I hated it.
Plus K in something. I don't know. Yeah.
All right. I think we can take another quick break, and then we've got lots more to talk about. Oh my goodness, it's just stacked.
Tons.
So much to talk about. But first, I want to tell you about Miro, who are bringing you this episode of This Week in Google. I got a question for you. Are you and your team still going from tab to tab to tab to tab to tool, losing brilliant ideas and important information along the way because of the context switching? With Miro, that doesn't need to happen. Miro is the collaborative visual whiteboard that brings all of your great work together no matter where you are. Whether you're working from home, if you're in a hybrid workspace, we were just talking about hybrid workspaces, everything comes together in one place online. At first glance, you may go to Miro.com and you may think, oh, it's just like a whiteboard, but it's online. But no, Miro's capabilities run far beyond that. It's actually a visual collaboration tool that has a bunch of features for the whole team to build on each other's ideas and create something innovative from anywhere. You can shorten your time to launch so your customers get what they need faster. With Miro, you need only one tool to see your vision come to life. There's planning, researching, brainstorming, designing, feedback cycles, and it can all live on one Miro board across teams. And faster input means faster outcomes. In fact, Miro users report the tool increasing project delivery speed by 29%. You can view and share the big picture overview in a cinch, and when everyone has a voice, then everyone can tap into a single source of truth. Your team remains engaged, invested, and of course, happy. Of utmost importance. You can cut out any confusion on who needs to do what by mapping out these processes, these roles, these timelines, and then do that with several templates, including Miro's swim lane diagram. So they've got a bunch of different templates that you can use, a bunch of different diagrams, including swim lanes, and it just makes sense. It's very easy to sort of work through the process and understand who's supposed to be doing what, when, how, and why. Strategic planning gets a whole lot easier when it's visual and accessible, so you can tap into a way to map processes, systems, and plans with the whole team so they not only view it, but have a chance to give feedback along the way. And if you're feeling that meeting fatigue, well, Miro users report saving up to 80 hours per user per year just from streamlining conversations. It's that it could have been an email. Well, now it could have been a Miro board. Ready to be a part of the more than 1 million users who join Miro every month? Like us. In fact, Leo and I use it for Ask the Tech Guys because we can get every single thing we need on this one board. So we can see the Google Doc that we have that has some information in it, get access to the tweets that people have sent us, access to the emails that people have sent us. And you're not having to jump between tabs and windows. Like when you walk through a door, you're going to go get something and you walk through that door and then you forget what it was you were supposed to be going after. Yeah. Our brains aren't good at that context switch in that moment. So this can help kind of keep everything rolling along right there in one spot. You out there can get your first 3 boards for free to start working better together at Miro.com/podcast. That's MIRO.com/podcast to check out Miro. And honestly, go there. Seriously, Miro.com/podcast. Go there. You can do it now. You can do it after the show. Just check it out. Because I think once you get there and you see how it works, it's like, oh, I should absolutely be using this. And then you get everybody else involved too. It's a lot of fun. I mean, even if you're just using it for personal reasons, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of a fun place to hang out, make different stuff, create boards. So head there, Miro.com/podcast. Thank you, Miro, for sponsoring this week's episode of This Week in Google. All right, we are back from the break. And if you're just now joining us, I am Micah Sargent in for Leo Laporte, who's on vacation. I've got Jeff Jarvis, Glenn Fleischman, and Ant Pruitt here with me. We've had a great time thus far, but now we're going to talk about AI. So it's about to get, no, I kid. So every once in a while, we start talking about AI and the chat room just goes, here it comes. Oh, not this again. Oh boy. Look, AI, it's everywhere. And Bloomberg.
It's the new NFT.
It's the new, but this NFT sticks around and it's actually a real thing. I find this interesting, a large language model trained on financial data. And when I say I find this interesting, what I mean is I find it interesting that someone finds it interesting enough to create it, because it's not, I don't care about it myself.
Are you saying, how bored are you?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
I'm a little bit saying that. Look, I get it. I get why any company, I mean, that's the beauty, right, of a large language model, is that you can train it on different sets of data, and then it can actually work to answer the questions that you might have. So I don't know. Am I able to type into Bloomberg GPT and say, how do I make $1 million? Now
that
would be great.
Technology.
That would be great, right? But that's not what this is.
What's so good about it, though, is that I think we've got to get in the Stochastic Parrots paper we've talked about by Timnit Gebru and company. One of the things they argue is that the boys of Silicon Valley and the boys of AI always wanting bigger things, because, hey, we boys are like that. And so having bigger and bigger and bigger language models is not the goal. And in fact, that makes it harder to understand, harder to control, harder to audit and keep in quality. That in fact, you want things that are finite. So for Bloomberg to come along and say, we trained this on financial data, full stop. A colleague of mine at the journalism school named Sandeep Janarkar showed me just yesterday how he used ChatGPT, but he limited it to a certain amount of data about the school, so we can understand that. So it would get the answers right because it was using the right data, and you knew what data it was using.
Less of a chance for hallucination.
This is smart. Pardon me?
Less of a chance for hallucination, which is like when it makes up data that doesn't exist. That's actually really good. I like this
Even
idea.
the idea of hallucination bothers me, because I think one of the ethical things we've got to do with LLMs is, it's too late. The horse is out of the barn, over the horizon, and already made into glue. But I think one of the problems here is that we, by having LLMs speak in the first person, we anthropomorphize them when we think it's a human, right? When it should say the machine or the program. And then also to say that it didn't write anything. It assembled language.
Okay.
What they should be saying is, the program assembled blah, 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 blah. Instead it says, well, I wrote this, or I thought this, or I fell in love with Kevin Roos of the New York Times and wanted to break up his marriage. And we buy this as if it's going to have something more than what it is, which is a word prediction machine.
This is where I want to bring up an excellent piece in the Washington Post from Tatum Hunter, consumer technology reporter there. And I want to point out, it does have a sort of BuzzFeedy headline, but I promise you this is a really good piece. It's 3 things everyone's getting wrong about AI. But the piece is talking about taking things past news literacy and talking about AI literacy. And this was a really excellent piece that kind of discussed what you're talking about there, where we do need to think about the definitions, think about the terms, think about how we are not just talking about AI, but even contextualizing AI. And there was one point in here that we interviewed her on Tech News Weekly, and I sort of made the joke that I felt like I was being attacked because there's the part where we're talking about, once let's say I asked the AI to answer a question about, I don't know, if I mix these two colors together, what color do I get? Or even something like just the other day, I actually did this because I was curious what was going to happen. I said, can you invent 3 new emoji, give them names, describe them, and then for bonus, I actually said this in this verbiage. I said, for bonus points, explain how one of them could actually be misinterpreted by the end user and ends up sort of going viral in its misinterpretation. And it assembled words that were really compelling. And what Tatum Hunter was talking about, though, is you see it do one thing right, and then because you see it do that right, you may start to think that it can do everything right. And it's not like if I see my toddler walk for the first time that I should then give them the nuclear code launch codes, because if they're good at this, then they're going to be good
I'm sure your kid is so smart.
Yeah. In that very specific case, it works differently. But no, I actually kind of had to have that moment where I went, you know what, you're right. Just because I see it do this one thing correctly,
it's a really good point.
I shouldn't give it, sort of free range to not be skeptical of it getting other things right. But anyway, it goes along with what you're talking about there. And I like the idea of sort of narrowing this large language model. Maybe it's instead of a grande, it's a tall language model. It would be nice because that's what I would almost want to have an LLM trained to my specific data set. So if I was still doing consumer tech journalism involving writing, it knew my writing. I trained it to that, and then I trained it maybe to some RSS feeds that came through from different articles that I would read. And then just to use that as the means of answering questions versus now where I could ask it one question. I remember asking the other day, I was so curious, A, how it would respond, and B, I kind of wanted a quick answer that I knew would take a while to be Googling around. I was just thinking about car companies, or car insurance, life insurance. And I was thinking, how in the world do life insurance companies actually make money? Because
hold on, I can tell you, it's very interesting. Sorry. No.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I didn't know, and so it gave some different ideas, and then I was able to later in the day use that as my jumping off point and go, okay, are these 3 things true? And it was right in that case, but if it's got access to however much it's scooped up until September 2021, because I'm using GPT-4, is what it's going to answer about one of these questions right? It may get 10 right, but then it gets 11 wrong. And if I give it too much trust, I won't know the difference between them.
Well, this Bloomberg story is particularly interesting because I think they're carving out something like that is I love this language. The complexity and unique terminology of the financial domain warrant a domain-specific model. Now let's feed that into an AI to explain it.
Yeah.
But they're saying they're using this data set to improve natural language processing, which is fascinating because I think one of the greatest things that ChatGPT introduced was the notion that you could answer a free-form question, and regardless of how good the answer was, it was typically a posit, right? It was on the topic you asked about, and often, if not always, gave you something in the realm of correctness. So, there is the issue of accuracy and what's being derived from and so forth. But I see this as, natural language processing or being able to make natural language queries has been an extremely difficult thing. It's been something people have been trying to solve for 40 years or more, because we want to be able to talk to a computer the way that we talk to other people. And we want to be able to call, a lot of companies want us as consumers to put our support requests into a format where they just throw an AI at it and we don't even know, and AI gives them good information. So Bloomberg I think this is actually a very interesting space where they're using this to study how best to be able to produce better answers to natural language questions about difficult things to conceive of in the financial world, because the financial world is so recondite, right? There's so much terminology and background and so forth you need. And so if it's a tool to improve the way you can ask a question and get an understandable result. That seems like a shaped missile as opposed to a dropped nuclear bomb.
Well put. That's, yeah, I agree. That's exactly what it is. Now, sometimes we take the technology that we've created and we do irresponsible things with it. And then our parents come along and they slap our hands and say, you shouldn't have done that. And in this case,
keep it for themselves.
Yeah. And they say, don't eat that cookie. That was for me. In this case, Midjourney is the parent and the cookie is the free trial. We don't get our free trial cookies anymore because we've been misusing Midjourney.
Why we can't have nice things.
Exactly. Why can't we have nice things? Because people put the Pope in a coat, and apparently that's enough to be to be bad. I don't know.
Pope on a rope, okay. Pope in a coat, not okay.
No, right.
What are the thoughts here? Because yes, you will automatically cut off a certain number of users who would have done potentially irresponsible or silly and perhaps unimportant, I guess, things with this technology by removing the free trial.
Hey, yo.
But does this not also limit access to people who thinking about sort of the democratization of this technology or access to this technology, doesn't this also cut people off who may not be able to afford it, who could be creating really cool things? And shouldn't it instead be shouldn't it be the responsibility of the groups that are making the technology to keep it from doing something like a relatively believable photo of Donald Trump being arrested?
You mean content moderation?
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah,
those two words that people don't like to hear.
But how can you possibly, the problem with that is you're asking the program creators to predict everything bad that bad people could do with it.
Yeah.
And then get blamed if you didn't predict something and they invented it anyway, which of course, look at Kevin Roose. He wanted the computer to fall in love with him so he could write a story saying, it fell in love with me. How ridiculous. I couldn't sleep that night with my wife because she now knew that he had wandering eyes for a computer. So I think we've got to it's back to the story you mentioned in the Washington Post. We've got to be more realistic about these things and recognize what they are and take that at face value. The desire to panic so suddenly and say it could do bad things. Well, so I saw a story, I forget where it was today, where the journalist got the computer to say something bad and then wrote a story saying, look at the bad thing the computer said.
Yeah.
Yeah, those stories really get on my nerves because if you make it do the thing, it's doing the thing. And especially whenever we see how much bending over backwards, sideways, and doing, I don't know, a triple backflip spiral to be able to even make it do this thing that they want to write the story about. That is frustrating. I guess I should rephrase sort of what I was saying, because you're right. It is not that I even want the company or the group to have to moderate in that way. I guess really what I'm saying is I don't like that we have to, or we think, I guess, that we have to close down this tool because of the people doing the bad things. I almost wish somehow we were better at it. We were better at spotting whenever it's somebody doing a bad thing with it, because there are people out there who can't gain access to this tool because they can't afford the extra money to do it, but could maybe benefit from this. I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. In our executive program that I helped start at the school, almost half the students are international, and English is their second or third or God knows fourth language. I feel like a stupid American. I only have one. And they're using these tools to smooth out their English and to code switch for American and English readers, right? Well, that empowers them.
Yeah.
And, I've had other thoughts that I think these tools can be used to help people tell their stories in ways they don't feel capable of doing. It extends writing. It extends the privilege those of us who write for a living have to express ourselves well. And I think that's amazing. But you're right, Micah. If you cut it off, you say, oh my God, danger, 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 everything could do wrong, then we cut off the possibilities of people that we can't imagine how they use it. And what's the harm of putting the Pope
in a coat?
And everybody knew it was about, I think everybody had the same experience. I didn't tweet it. I said, too good to be true. Love it. Too good to be true. Some people didn't, and they tweeted it and thought, oh, I got fooled. But within 10 minutes, everybody knew it wasn't real.
I just wanted my Google Lens to find that code online so I could buy it. That's all I cared about.
Yeah.
That's actually what I think is going to happen, is that people are going to design fashion and then the machine can make what they've imagined.
Yes.
What I find funny is the headline says Midjourney ends its free trial after fake images go viral. We're still going to get fake images for people that decide to, you know what, I can just go ahead and pay for Midjourney. It's not like, say on Twitter, the Twitterverse. Was my phone not muted? Holy moly. Sorry about that.
Good
say,
point.
like on the Twitterverse, people buying that blue check to look important or look verified or what have you, and end up just being a troll account. It didn't stop them for being bad actors and paying to be a bad actor. So what's the difference here? We're going to keep seeing some pretty fascinating images that are fake.
Also, there's a literal meme online called looks fake, you can tell by the pixels. People have been photoshopping stuff. I know Adobe hates it whenever you use it as a verb, but oh well. People have been photoshopping these things for years, these kinds of photos for years. And just because, I mean, and I would love to talk to the original creator of that specific, those two specific photos, to hear what they had to type in, how many times they had to like regenerate it, if they upscaled it, if they took one photo and had things added in the background. I mean, it's not trivial. I don't think they just typed well, and I can't be sure, but from the look of it and based on my own experiences with the different AI generative tools that I have used, it takes more than just typing in one sentence and getting what you want. So in that same time that the person sort of tweaked things, they could have found a photo of
image
of white man getting arrested and then just photoshopped Trump over the top of it. So is it
the guy who did the Pope of the coat said that he was high on mushrooms and was just having a ball.
Wow.
That's amazing. The coat is sort of mushroom-like, so it's really inspired, I think.
It really is. So if I may,
please.
Even though I know it's not a democracy, I just wanted to throw in something from later in the show. I'm going to now sacrifice one of my numbers for this purpose because it's relevant. I know you all are waiting to figure out what it is that you should get me for Christmas. And I want to give you plenty of time to figure this out and learn new skills about how to sew things, because I have found the puffer coat that I want. And I know Glenn Fleischman is going to want really badly line 98, Micah.
Line 98?
Line 98. Yes. If Benito, you can. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's lovely.
No,
it is, for those listening, the keyboard puffer coat by Liminal. And the coat is nothing but gigantic puffy keys of a typewriter.
No, I want the one that's the typecase. So it's got a giant section for an E and a T and a smaller one, Y's and Z's and Q's. So it has to be just to be.
But this is what you get for your collaborator in Shift Happens.
I love the Octothorpe being used as the zipper pull. That's fantastic.
I didn't even notice that.
I'm shocked that I haven't seen this before. So each of those are, I mean, ever. Like, has anyone ever made a keyboard coat before?
I don't know whether, I'm presuming that it's made up. I don't know.
Oh, I see. It could be. It may be.
Isn't Liminal
I tried to look it up.
I thought Liminal was like a generative art thing.
Oh, well, someone should now make this, and it should be Bluetooth enabled.
Oh my God, Glenn, yes. We can get Foon to make it into on Twitter to make it into
absolutely
true keyboard.
That's hilarious.
Hello, Glenn. I'm tweeting from my coat.
I don't know. Are all of us Laurie Anderson fans? Some of us might be Laurie Anderson. Remember her keyboard tie? She'd come out and she'd play the keyboard on her tie during concerts. It was actually connected back to her neck.
That was a dream, Glenn. That was a fever dream.
Everything related to Laurie Anderson seems like a dream, but is true.
I want the letters to be placed so that I can spell Macarena by doing the Macarena.
Oh my God. Well, listen, all things are possible in the future.
All things are possible with AI and a sewing needle.
Well, here's the thing that would be funny is eventually, I mean, I'm actually interested in AI as a generative tool in a different way. And it comes up from bits and pieces. Like someone said, oh, I was able to get, one of the LLMs to, it sounds like I'm saying LOL, one of the large language learning models. I was able to get it to write an entire app that I could compile and then upload onto the App Store for an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and then they detailed it was much more complicated than a single query. But there was a conversation that happened. I don't want to mention his name because I'm going to then go off on him. But there's a pundit out there, not a Jeff Jarvis, but more like what's Jeff Jarvis backwards? We need evil Jeff Jarvis. I can't do that in my head. Is that?
Wait, let me ask ChatGPT to do an anagram of Jeff Jarvis.
Sivraj Fej, the terrible pundit. But there's a guy who's always wrong except by his narrow domain. And he was like, oh, well, this could replace programming because you would just type a query in and it'll produce a program you need. And I'm like, no, it's an amplification for programmers because you type a query and instead of having to do a certain amount of coding work, it might produce something that's possibly workable or maybe accurate, but you need to have the expertise to evaluate it, troubleshoot it, extend it. But I do think something like, would you create me a create me a template that would allow me to create this puffer jacket in a way that I could then upload it to a place that there's all these service bureaus that do fabric cutting, laser cutting, 3D printing, whatever. It would be very Will Gibson, I want this thing. And instead of me using fancy 3D software and goggles to do it, I'm just like, hey, here's a thing I want to do, and I'm describing it, and it creates the stuff for me. Now that seems more feasible. That could eventually be something that was created.
I would like to update real quick. I said I need a name that sounds like Jeff Jarvis but sounds evil, like an evil twin. And here is what the AI compiled. It said, how about Jexx Javros? It has a similar sound to Jeff Jarvis, but with a more sinister and menacing twist.
Javros that is really good.
Jexx Javros.
Well, Jexx, I think, sounds perfectly
have your
bashing in evil way.
Evil twin now. You got your evil twin. Jexx Javros. Jexx Javros.
Jexx
Really good.
Javros.
Wow. I'm very happy with that.
Moving right along in the AI sort of area, we've got AI guys now. You know, we had the crypto guys. What was Ether? Was it Ether? What was it that they had? ETH. .eth.
Yeah, it was ETH.
In their names. And it seems that now we have reached a new level where you've got the AI guys. Now,
what I want to know is, are all these people who were crypto guys,
right? And
in
they
fact
just changed
to become, of course, I'm an AI guy. And by the way, during the pandemic, I really knew a lot about epidemiology.
Yeah, they were Ukraine and Russia experts for a while.
Oh yes,
and
absolutely.
now they're AI experts. It's a great hustle, though, isn't it? Here's how you move from a thing that's bankrupted morally and ethically to here's how we do this other thing.
I have seen, I'm curious, in your own sort of research regarding AI, there have been a few guides out there that I think can be helpful. Sometimes people will publish sort of their own interactions with every time now I've got this little Jexx Javros sitting on my shoulder, who, depending on what words I'm using,
on one shoulder.
Yeah, Jeff is like, exactly.
Look at your tagline, Jeff. Yeah. There we go.
And so they have occasionally written some really great instructions and guides and helpful bits about, if you ask this way, or if you include this amount of detail, then it's helpful. Because I have sometimes found where if I give too much information, and it's kind of like what you were talking about, Jeff, where these large language models, they just keep making them larger and larger and larger and larger, which opens up an opportunity for mistakes, that it can be helpful to kind of find that sweet spot. But you risk coming across a lot of these AI guys who in some cases are selling the exact same pamphlet that doesn't have any new information in it about prompting. And I'm sure that this question has come up before, but I am curious about, for all of you, and maybe we can just go down the line, starting with Glenn. Can you tell us about a compelling use, an actual compelling use that you've had for AI, be it these generative AI systems. So it can be the chat version, or it can be images, whatever.
Well, I'm going to give you two, because one I'm borrowing for somebody else, but I haven't tried it yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. So the first one is giving myself explanations of very technical topics. And I feel like I'm a technical person and I know how to research and whatever, but I got undiagnosed from medical condition, as I keep saying it. I was diagnosed with something incorrectly, but not totally. It's a long story. Don't need to share that part. But when I was undiagnosed, I got this thing from a doctor. It was the first reading of a thing, of a medical result. And I was like, I don't know what this means. So I asked ChatGPT, and it sort of unspun it for me. And then I used that to confirm it was accurate. And I thought, this is great. And of course, you can't just do that on its own. You have to be able to research it to make sure it's telling you something that's accurate. But I was able to give it terminology that was too sophisticated for me in the medical realm. And I think, gosh, every day people are confronted. Everyone is supposed to be an expert in everything. My older kid is going to college this fall, and we are suddenly in the last year supposed to be experts on college admissions, financial aid, the FAFSA, the CSS, all of this, right? I don't really want to be an expert in it, but we became, my wife and I, as much experts as we needed to be. So the idea of being able to lower the expertise basis by taking jargon or terminology or lengthy things and saying simplify, I've already had that be beneficial. But my second one, which is very quickly, is I have a friend who's also making a transition into researching the past. His area is Shakespeare, mine is 19th century printing. And he said because some of these models have ingested all public domain sources, he's using it to get leads on things that are hard to find by searching on HathiTrust, Google Books, Internet Archive. You just ask a model that has it all in there, hey, what do you know about this? And it starts to spit out stuff. And some of it, again, is manufactured. But Mr.
Which models have HathiTrust in there?
I don't know yet. I got to talk to him more, but I want to experiment, because Google Books, I think, has been ingested. But so anyway, that's a use I'm looking forward to as a researcher, is being able to say, you have all public domain knowledge. Tell me how to find this. Tell me.
Right. I could imagine tomorrow going to HathiTrust, for those who don't, is the product of Google scanning all this great material, all these libraries, with tons of old journals and books and magazines, and it's invaluable. And I would love to be able to go to it and say, just use HathiTrust and find me examples of moral panic around children.
Oh, that would be.
It may make them up, but then it inspires, because it probably will make them up. But it may get the stuff actually from the defined source, and in any case, it'll inspire you.
Mm-hmm. I think that's that opportunity for inspiration. I'll name two. One that is just kind of silly, and one that was actually helpful. So the other day, a family member we'd been talking a little bit back and forth, and they said, "How are you?" And I wanted to say I was busy, but I wanted to say it in a way that was sort of funny. And so I said, someone asked me how I've been. I want to respond with a hilarious, slightly bizarre country-style metaphor a la sweatier than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs that explains how I've been incredibly busy lately. And I said, the response should start out busier than, can you give me 5 options? So here were the 5. And then I'll tell you which one I went with. There's busier than a juggling octopus in a circus act. Not great. Busier than Times Square on New Year's Eve. Also not funny. This is the one that I went with, and I thought it was funny. Busier than a centipede at a shoe sale.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Okay,
that's you. Good. That's you.
Learned.
Busier than a flea at a dog show.
No.
It's okay. And then the last one was busier than a penguin on an ice cream delivery mission. What?
That is
so.
I like that one.
I only had the one that I chose, which was centipede at a shoe sale. I thought that was great. And then the person thought it was hilarious.
People have no follow-up questions to the penguin one. That's the utility that. Give me a response that no one will ask an additional question.
If I'm done, I am done talking to this person. Give me a reply where they're not going to say anything back.
His brain's going a little crazy. I think I'll just leave him alone.
Yeah,
that's right.
But the one that actually was helpful, and I've been using GPT-4, using GPT Plus to get access to that. I don't know if GPT-4 is available now broadly, but I'm not used to having like very, very dry hands, but in the past like month or so, my hands have been incredibly dry and cracking. And so,
dude, you're in Sonoma County, duh.
Well, but it hasn't happened to me before. I've lived here now since 2019. And this is the first time that it's happened. So I said, my hands are dry, they're cracking, they're chapped. Could you give me a multi-step regimen and some product suggestions for healing and remoisturizing my hands? It started off by compiling words, including a phrase that says, I'm not a dermatologist, but I can offer some general suggestions for this regimen. And what I was surprised by was not only did it give me a really good regimen, including cleaning the hands, exfoliating, moisturizing, and then even providing some ideas for like overnight treatment. But it also talked about something that I actually have heard from a dermatologist before, which is consistency being important. You have to keep doing it to restore the barrier.
I don't know. People get nervous enough about Dr. Google. Dr. ChatGPT makes me really
right there.
Well, this is what surprised me, Jeff, is that
I'm not sure.
It actually named real products. And that's what I was like, wait, what? It didn't just say, you probably want to use this you want to use a hand cream no, it said like, you want to use O'Keeffe's Working Hands and Neutrogena.
Oh,
it actually named 3 or 4 different real brands.
Wow.
And
wait, is this product placement? Are we getting
right? That's what
GPT product placement?
That's what I thought. I'm going, okay.
Revenue stream.
What's going on here? So anyway,
that's how they
I
can
found
make
that
money
fascinating.
from it. Yeah. Underwrite it with product placement. Brilliant. There we go.
No, please don't.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff, you're next in line. How have you used it?
I proposed a use. I haven't done. I talked to the board, and I hope I haven't mentioned this on the show before, of the Marshall Project, which is a wonderful journalistic endeavor about justice in America, where we have too little of it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the people they serve are incarcerated. A fairly large size of their audience are considered illiterate. And they want to bring out the stories of the people they serve. And it struck me that you could use these tools so that someone could say, I want you to help me tell my story better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a sense of code switching, right? Mm-hmm. Tell it in the way that the world's going to understand. Mm-hmm. But I think there's an or even almost more exciting is to illustrate it. I don't have a camera in prison. I can't draw. I can't show you what it is, but I can describe it and get it in a way that people may empathize with and may understand because it's visual. I think that these tools could be used in those ways. For our journalism students, we have some students who come, again, New York is the world, so English is a second, third, or fourth language, and it can use to smooth out their language, make it dull in some cases, which wouldn't be great. But I think it's interesting to imagine how it expands literacy for people.
Wow. Yeah. That is a compelling answer and compelling use. And we'll round things out with Ant.
I got nothing.
None?
All of my stuff has been private. If folks are following me on social media, I've been in campaign mode for Hardhead. So I've been working with some images of my boy, trying to, make like little posters and things like that. And still trying to quite figure out in painting and figure out how, the image to image process. But it's been fun and created a couple things that look okay and it could still use a little work. But that's been the only use I've gotten out of it is just art and the freedom and just whatever you can imagine, you can pretty much put it out there, as we've seen when Midjourney says, yeah, we need to slow this thing down, and because people can just come up with anything and it's creating nice pieces of art.
I think after the show, Ant will be going on and saying, how do I get rid of irritating turkeys?
Yes.
Oh, I know how. It's called a big wooden stick. That's how.
Okay. What's
a pot, a large cooking pot.
Yeah, and that. And Mr. Sergeant, as far as your hands, I know a pretty good manicurist that would recommend paraffin wax and gloves.
Paraffin wax and gloves. I happen to know that manicurist, and I would trust that manicurist, so I'm going to write that down.
Paraffin wax and gloves, and I have done that myself. So yeah.
Oh, nice.
Hot paraffin wax.
Paraffin wax and gloves. It works.
Also a popular mystery show.
Oh, now I'm going to have to ask ChatGPT to invent a mystery show called Paraffin Wax and Gloves. While that's generating, let me ask, any of these other AI topics that really stand out, Jeff, that you wanna cover before we move on?
Oh,
I want to make sure not to miss anything that was really
anybody.
Yes, of course, anybody. Before we move along to the next topics,
I like image identification. I'll tell you one of the most exciting. So, one of the best things that Apple has rolled out is it's machine learning based, so it's not LLM based so far. And Apple's been noticeably sitting this one out because they're good about avoiding certain kinds of things until they think it's mature. And they're like, we need to let this all wash over us while we're making our 30% profit margins. Let everybody else fight it out. But one of I think the biggest improvements in my life as a user of Apple integrated products is how well they've gotten object recognition and text recognition inside of images. And you can search now. I know search on the word Gutenberg in honor of Mr. Jeff Jarvis, and I lose track of it. And Javros. And I have sometimes there's a page. It's like a galley of a book upside down at an angle. It's 3 pixels, and it will recognize the word Gutenberg in that. And this changes how you interact with your photos. So this story about Meta working on an AI model identifying items within images. I think it's going to be there's a few areas that I think are going to be both terrifying and important in the future. One is every photo that's published of anyone ever that's available publicly will have them recognized regardless of safeguards. So you'll be able to do a search in Aunt Pruitt and I'll find you everywhere. And it won't matter how much laws. Right. he's a shadow. You'll never find him. He's hiding in the background. And the other is every piece of audio you've ever been in eventually will be your voice will be recognized, identified. It'll be transcribed. Every piece of text and every image. And so some of this and every object and every topic discussed on audio, on video, in an image, I think will also be characterized. So that's like an oncoming storm, and I think we're seeing in both good and bad ways. Like it's kind of like California. We need the water, right? You need the water because we were in a drought condition, but that was too much water. Let's not have that much. So, but I think this is a sign of what's coming. Is we're going to see a lot more of this sub recognition. So it's not just there's a cat in that, but it's here's the cat's name. It's Fluffy. Fluffy.
I know. I agree with you. I did not realize, it took me a while to realize a very helpful tool in iOS where when I'm especially in messages, but it's in any text field, there's a new little button. And when you press that button, it is a text import feature. And it basically, it opens up the camera and you can do a live view over something in front of you. And then it will sort of lift that text off of the page and then it gets dropped into that text field. So, Can I
tell you my stupidest tip?
Tell us your stupidest tip.
I've written an article about this stupidest tip. So when someone tells you a phone number and you have a pen, you're using your phone, so you write it down, and then you're like, oh, now I have to go through all of the trouble. It's like the 1890s of dialing the number that I'm reading there. Well, if you write it neatly enough, you take a picture with your phone, you tap the text recognition thing, you tap the number, and then it says, do you want to dial this number? You dial the number that way.
Brilliant.
It's the most ridiculous. Brilliant. It's the worst life hack ever. Because, typing in 10 digits in America, that's too many. I don't
Brilliant.
At a time.
Well, you get to be my age, it's too hard to remember 10 digits.
I guess then, though, Ant, you're talking about how he'll have trouble finding you.
Yeah.
You are on a publicly available video program at the moment. Uh-oh. So,
But this last experiment, and I kid, of course, we searched for me in Google and it came up with nothing. But yet,
what?
Miss Stacy came up with all kinds of interesting information about her on the show. Couldn't find anything about old Aunt Pruitt, and I'm totally fine with that.
That's good. I think you should be proud. Of that. Someone on a site I write for, Tidbits, a reader was asking a question about how to research classmates for a class reunion. They have 750 people in their class, and they've tracked down about 500, which is pretty good because I think they're
that's good.
A little older than them. And they said there's 250 people we can't hide or hear of. Are these sites that help you with reunions, whatever, helpful? And people are saying maybe not. But I was like, man, that is super impressive that 250 out of 750 people, you can't search on their name and find them. It's like, is this the disappearing class? But I helped organize a class reunion several years ago. It was earlier in the history of Google and everything else. And there are some people, even today, I'm like, God, I wonder whatever happened to so-and-so. There's not a trace.
Yeah,
I don't think they died. I think they are an Aunt Pruitt. They are off the radar.
I missed a couple of class reunions for that reason right there. And then folks decided, well, maybe we should look at Twitter or maybe we should look at Instagram. And they found me there. So, yeah, I've missed the 10-year and I've missed I think I missed the 5-year or was it? No, 10-year.
Mumble. I missed the mumble year.
We just had a very lazy student council. So none of the folks who were elected that year have had any interest in making reunions. Not that I would be going, but still, it was just kind of like every year.
We're glad to be rid of each other.
Years, yeah. it's
everybody's going to relive their embarrassment of 11th grade. No,
Rock and Roll High School.
Not go back.
They want to meet in the
High
metaverse.
School. They blew up the school at the end of the movie, and we're all done. Never going back.
XOXO.
The most famous alum from my high school in Lombard, Illinois, was Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber.
Oh, lovely.
Ours was probably Tracy Bonham, the rock artist.
Oh.
I ain't got nothing.
A little better. Oh,
I got nothing.
Oh no, really?
Maybe me.
You.
Aunt Pruitt is the most famous graduate of his high school. That's
I don't
fine.
know, but I
put yourself on
that.
Wikipedia as the most notable graduate. Who's going to stop you? Who's
going to stop him?
No, I take that
Glenn,
back.
you have to do it
my
for
teammate.
You do it for
LaCroix.
Who? LaCroix.
LaCroix,
the inventor of LaCroix.
No, he played in the major leagues for many years. He was my high school teammate, and not that.
Can you tell him my favorite flavor is black raspberry, please?
Oh gosh, dude.
Again, product placement. What's going on here? I don't. Oh,
I'm sorry. I'm saying it's you. It's you.
You win.
You win.
You won high school.
I did want to quickly. I felt bad for Jexx Javros, so I asked if we could just do the other names as well. So if you're curious, my evil twin's name is Mordak Serpent.
Oh,
that's very good.
That's great.
Very good.
Ant's evil twin is Axe Prowleth. So it's like prowl on the end.
Ooh,
that's pretty good.
And then
Axe prowleth at night.
Yes, indeed. Yes. And then Glenn, you
going after turkeys.
Turkey,
Wild
baby.
Oh, Axe prowleth
are quaking
at midnight. The Axe prowleth.
Of Axe prowleth. We're all sitting around the radio. Glenn, you get to choose because I wasn't sure which of these two were which one you wanted. So you have the choice between Gassed Fiendish Claw or Grim Flayshard.
Oh, these sound like Halloween names. I used to go with Ghoul Fleshman.
Oh, that's good.
When we changed our Twitter handles back when that happened at Halloween.
Ghoul Fleshman. See, that's a little bit closer.
I did better
yeah, you did
better than the Human Beings won.
Maybe it knew that you already had that one, and it thought I gotta. Or no, wait, it doesn't know because it's not alive, right? Right, Jexx? I'm sorry, my little friend. I'm sorry for saying AI was alive.
Answer my name.
All right, let's move on. I don't want to talk about Twitter, so let's not.
You're the boss. There's not a democracy. You're the boss.
Your call.
That's all there is to it.
I know that Stacy isn't here, but I also like to talk about smart home stuff, and I am curious to hear everyone's thoughts. If this falls into moral panic area for you or sort of societal panic area for you, Jeff, and then just your thoughts in general. So Amazon has this feature called Sidewalk. And what Amazon did was they said, okay, we've got all of these devices in people's homes.
Very Stacy story.
These Echo devices. And we could take a small little portion of that Echo device that is connected to your local Wi-Fi and is connected to the internet through your router. And we just take a small portion of that and we make it available to nearby Amazon devices so that they can use that internet connection, and they put a cap on it so that you can't, it won't end up harming your bandwidth. It won't take up all of your network. It won't be anything like that. And this will help, in theory. It takes a village, I guess, because then you've got all the different Ring cameras and all the other stuff that Amazon has, all working together to provide network access no matter where you are. Originally, if I recall, this was a feature that Amazon had planned to have on by default. Then they decided to have it off by default. And so you have to go in and say, yes, I want to be part of Amazon Sidewalk. What they've just done, though, that I found interesting is they've decided to open up the Amazon Sidewalk network to anyone who is a developer or manufacturer of different gadgets. So the idea is that if you use sort of their Sidewalk developer kit, then you could also latch on to this network, this free network that's available called a low power wide area network, and give folks the chance to, make devices that can connect even whenever there's not full on Wi-Fi nearby. Now, I think it's important to note that we have seen similar behavior through many an ISP. Lots of internet service providers who also give you the router/modem package will make part of people's networks available to other subscribers of that particular ISP. And
that's what I was going to ask. Is this similar to that? Walking out in the neighborhood, I can connect to the quote unquote carrier's Wi-Fi network on my mobile device and still have access to the internet without having to lean on the cell phones.
In that case, I think they're actually, if I remember right, now this could have changed over time, but I know that Comcast, Xfinity, I think Charter, some other companies, they were saying they weren't going to take from your bandwidth. They're essentially going to provision additional bandwidth onto your network to make it available to other people. And at one point that seemed ludicrous because they didn't have that much overhead. And now it's not as unreasonable. They have sometimes hundreds of megabits per second available in neighborhoods. They're just saying we're not going to impact your network. We're not going to apply it towards caps.
Okay.
It's not, there's a firewall. I mean, I'm making it sound better than it is possibly. There's a firewall, a virtual
evil cable company,
virtual LAN. Yeah, exactly. There's a VLAN between all these things. So ostensibly those systems are letting you have actual internet access. This is all kind of like little things, right? It's Internet of Devices. It's something needs to do a DNS lookup or pull down a weather thing, right, Micah? This is all like little.
Yeah, it's absolutely. It is. Okay. Yeah, Amazon Sidewalk. It's not just I can get on your internet and do whatever I want. It's one example is Amazon's own accessory, which was a mailbox sensor, where when you opened the mailbox, then it would know that the mailbox was opened and then let you know. But a lot of times people's mailboxes are pretty far away from their homes. And so if there was somebody's device closer to that, it would use that internet connection. So it is in some ways the same in terms of just that there is internet access out there to be used, so that it kind of works the same. But in terms of how much room they're giving on a specific person's network, it's very little. The one concern that I saw from different companies, or not from different companies, but from a few publications, was that due to the nature of Amazon Sidewalk, whenever you were sort of provisioning a gadget to work with Amazon Sidewalk, if there weren't too many folks nearby who had Amazon Sidewalk turned on, you could kind of geolocate someone's property by turning it on, turning it off, trying to find that Amazon Sidewalk. But again, that's sort of a very specific, and it's not as if they can find Micah Sargent's Amazon Echo for Amazon Sidewalk.
Targeted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this reminds me, if we go way back, is when I was running the Wi-Fi networking news site in the Audis, like 2005 or 6, a company called Phone, F-O-N, was trying to get folks to swap in their own routers and essentially build a public, like private, or not public private, but a like a homeowner a network of hotspots that would supplement stuff in areas that didn't have ubiquitous access before cellular networks had adopted like 3G speeds even. And so phone is the first thing like that I remember. And it was an interesting idea, but it required hardware swaps, and it are they? They're still around.
Yeah, phone.com.
Yeah. Well, I wonder what they do these days. They had to deal with ISPs, legitimate use agreements in which you were literally not allowed to do that. But then some ISPs got on board, some partnered. I think British Telecom did. I feel like the idea keeps cycling around, and it's hard to beat like Apple's Find My Network, which is crowdsourced based on the fact that there's just like a billion Apple devices out there that can pass this information. It's very, very limited at sending short Bluetooth messages and encrypted location information. But I think Amazon would love to have something like that as well. I know Google's also, I saw in the news this last week that Google has, or there's a discussion that Google may be trying to launch a similar system to Apple's that's device-based. So, but between the three, you can have incredible ubiquity of not access, but like location information or small data, moving like IoT networks, Zigbee or something like that, but everywhere instead of just inside a house or Bluetooth LE.
Bought
kind of
by Agile Content in 2021.
I hate it when that happens.
Phone is the past, but it created the future. There we go.
I think it's interesting how different companies are attempting to sort of make their network this all-encompassing network. And we saw after Amazon's acquisition of Miro that then there were echoes that when that acquisition sort of completed, and as Amazon rolled out new firmware updates to those echoes, surprise, there's actually a little Wi-Fi radio in there that can work as its own little router as part of your system. And with the networking tools available, I've thought about, because I read the white paper about the security of Amazon Sidewalk, and I felt pretty good about it. And it did have that sort of, it takes a village vibe where I wouldn't mind doing it if other people are doing it as well, because I have plenty of room and they only allow so much. And it's for things like dog trackers and, again, mail trackers and to send. It's not for actually viewing a doorbell or viewing an outdoor camera, but actually sending motion notifications it can do over this network. So you wouldn't be able to use someone's connection to stream that, but just to get the notifications back to where they needed to go. It's a compelling idea, but I know that regardless of all of that, folks have their security concerns, which in many ways are not backed up by sort of how the system works, meaning that
that's what I was going to ask. Those concerns are warranted?
No, I don't think that
people don't quite understand.
Yeah, exactly. Based on what I read in the white paper and in some of the support documents regarding Amazon Sidewalk, because I used to do this show here at Twit called Smart Tech Today, and that Amazon Sidewalk kept coming up over and over again. So I did that deep dive and did a lot of research on it. And it is a very secure system. And honestly, like, Amazon is very aware of Echo and ALEXA as being sort of in the past especially, but in some cases even still, something that folks are wary of for privacy reasons. And so they genuinely have worked to try and combat that and answer to those concerns that people have. So yeah, in this very specific case, Amazon Sidewalk, I don't feel like the concerns about it somehow being a privacy issue are warranted based on the data that's available to me. All right. Let us cover one more topic before we head into the change log.
Ooh, the change log.
The change log. I've heard of this mysterious change log.
It's been overlooked.
I
Rumored.
Well, now I'm feeling weird. Like maybe we shouldn't be doing the change log.
Nope. Do it out of spite.
If you're like, Leo grumbles about it. To do it enthusiastically, to do it with verve.
With verve.
Vim and vigor.
I wanted to talk to you three about live audio and how for a while there, I think, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, remember Clubhouse? There were all of these, all of these services that touted live audio, and people would hop on together. You'd have conversations, and people would tune in to these live conversations. And over time, monthly active users, the downloads, I guess, of these audio apps have just dropped and plummeted. I gave up on Clubhouse shortly after I started using Clubhouse because for me, it just wasn't compelling. But I know a lot of people really liked these services for a while. And I'm kind of curious, everyone's take on what made them a success in the beginning and why we think they have dropped in popularity overall. Is there just more that's better now, or is everyone just typing things into ChatGPT for their entertainment these days?
I think in the beginning it was a lot of the whole pandemic karma, if you will. People needed contact and being able to connect and hear voices and not necessarily read text. Some people found that comforting to just have a chat about, I don't know, Red Sox or something, or cats or whatever. And then it got to where it's even more niche, where you get professionals out there, pro photographers. I remember several photographers opening up Clubhouse or what have you, and just wanting to chat about what they were working on, or share some tips and answer questions for people that were trying to learn and things like that. And it was fairly helpful for those folks. I get it. But after a while, I know personally, I got tired of listening to them. It turned into the same old thing of a bit preachy, at least on the photography side of things. And sometimes it didn't really come off as encouraging to the community, in my opinion. But I've said that about professional photographers in the past, that a lot of them just, for whatever reason, are just jackasses and jerks and they just don't really do anything to help encourage someone that's interested in this art to go forward and at least try it, even if it's just with their phone. Don't just dismiss them because they don't have a body, a camera body. Just photography is photography, But then also, it seems like all of these little live audio things turn more into crypto and NFT talks. Yeah. And that turned off a lot of people.
Well, also the fascism. That's so.
Yeah, that played.
That happened.
Yeah.
I think that also the rise of, Discord was certainly doing well beforehand, but they have so many. They keep adding more audio tools and group things. I'm looking at to promote Twit's own service here. There's, the live stream and other kinds of audio chat environments you can do entirely within Discord. And I wonder, what was Clubhouse and some of these other tools, were they gateway drugs for people to go, hey, audio chat with people is kind of neat, but I don't want to talk with all these bozos. I want to find my affinity community to talk with directly, and then I'll use a tool that's entirely my community or one of my communities. So I wonder if overall the amount of group audio chats being facilitated via platforms, have the minutes still gone up, and it's really the public ones, these things like Clubhouse, that were overvalued and overhyped? Did those just Twitter Spaces, did those just reduce in value as people found communities?
I don't know. I'm thinking it's hype cycle. Like everything that Jason Calacanis touches, it soars up the hype cycle.
Yeah.
And Mark Andreessen and all and the boys all said this is the hot thing, and everybody has to do it. And then, but of course, they made it special. You had to have an invitation. You couldn't really do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then the hype cycle. Then at the apogee of the hype cycle, everybody else says we got to do this too. So of course, Meta does it, and Reddit does it, Spotify does it, right?
Yeah.
And they give up sooner than Clubhouse, because they don't have a whole company based on it. And they said, oops, this was dumb. This is like a pivot to video. Why would we do that? Right? What were you thinking? And it's gone, right? And then Clubhouse now has to say, we're still here. Anybody want to talk? And I think that it was the usual overdose. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I think, Glenn, you're right. I think people see the utility in doing this and people can enjoy it. But I think at some point, it got to be too big, too crazy.
Yeah, it was like everything's going to be audio. This is the future. We're worth billions of dollars. Everyone's like, come on, you're a flash in the pan. And then we were proven right. Smugly, we get to say we were proven right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for the analysis. Genuinely, that may have sounded sarcastic, but I didn't mean to.
What are you talking
Thanks for the analysis. That was
You're welcome, bro.
That was who was
your
that?
Evil name Muskrat.
Yeah, that was Mordak Serpent coming out there first.
Mordak Serpent's images.
Moving along to the change log.
Change log.
The change.
What happened?
The volume on the PC is a little low. That's all.
Is that it? Oh, okay.
That's the intro. I want those for my shows. Those are so fun. Who do I gotta talk to get a stinger like that?
Ask Chat GPT to make one for you.
There we go. That's what I'll do. First, you know what? We're going to do this. I don't know if this is supposed to be speed round, but we're speed rounding because actually the first one is a story we already talked about. Google Drive does not have a file cap now. It's just the size or the storage cap. So if you've got 30 terabytes of storage space, by golly, you can fill up all 30 terabytes of storage space until you reach that next limit that they just haven't said yet. So who knows what that looks like. 1 Google Files. That is a number, folks, in case you didn't know. Moving right along, Google has launched an ad transparency center. So you can actually learn about where the ads that you're seeing in search, in YouTube, and on your Google display are coming from. It shows the ads an advertiser has run. It shows which ads were shown in a certain region, and it shows the last date an ad ran and the format of the ad. So if you see an ad for a skin car, yes, that is a thing I don't even want to imagine in my head because it sounds horrifying. That is terrifying. Anyway, a skincare product you're interested in, but you don't recognize the brand. You want to learn more about it. You can tap to learn more and then see who or what is advertising and see what the ads look like depending on where they're being shown. So in different regions, you can see that. I think this is great because I like the idea of all of us being able to know sort of what company is behind it. Because if I tap on the company for the advertisements and every single ad is different and none of them are related to one another, it's all over the place, or if it's only being shown in specific regions, it just gives you a little bit more insight into what's going on with that specific Google ad. So I think that's a pretty cool change. And of course, anyone feel free to cut in if there's something specific you want to say about one of these changelog moments. But then Google Search is going to get some new features. I saw this, and I think this is kind of exciting because I very rarely travel, but I've been a few times in the past year where I have I was going to need to travel and it didn't end up being the case. And so I used Google Flights to do this. But now there are just some features built directly into search, including browsing hotels. So you can actually look through hotel images to see where it is. It sort of presents itself as a story, almost like an Instagram story or one of those where you can kind of tap through and see different images, see how much it's going to cost. There are also, with Google Flight, you can actually lock in some prices. Nice. Yeah, price guarantees, that's what they're called. So if it has, so it's not exactly locking in, but it's saying, and I'll quote directly from the blog, it says, quote, "If you see a flight with the price guarantee badge, it means we're confident that the price you see today won't get any lower before takeoff." So based on sort of their tie-in, yeah.
It won't get any lower.
Oh, that's a good point. I guess it's,
but it can't.
Oh, it could get higher. Okay, so that's not
price guarantee is we're going to charge you more. No, I don't think they're going to do that.
Oh man.
Oh, I misunderstood that. That's kind of sad.
That sounds like some lawyer ball right there.
It does say we'll monitor the price every day until departure, and if it goes down, then we will send. Oh, so yeah, you can.
They will. Oh, good.
You can pay for it.
That's better.
That's
Your
what
language
it
is hilarious. The price we guarantee we won't charge you any less. No, it didn't mean that. It didn't mean that.
A new friendly Google.
Promise to.
We're on Chromebooks and we're grumpy.
Possible.
And then also via Google search, you can explore an area. So if, and instead of actually finding someone who does travel guiding, you can just use your Google search toolbar to do that for you. All right. You might be excited about this, Jeff. The Google Pixel tablet has arrived at the FCC. I don't know if it means in person, but it's going to feature ultra wideband connectivity.
Yeah.
Explain that to me, Micah. What does that do?
UWB is a ultra wide frequency.
We've turned on Glenn GPT.
I've been writing about UWB for 15 years, since 802.15.2.3. I can't remember the numbers.
Yeah.
At one point, it was going to be a Bluetooth. I'm talking all over you now. At one point, it was going to be a Bluetooth personal area networking standard, but they never got it to work exactly right. So instead, it's become this like finding and positioning tool that also carries data. Now I'm going to stop talking over you.
So how does it affect my life if I own this?
Well, Jeff, if you have any smart speakers from Google in your home, then what the ultra wideband chip in a Pixel tablet would do is let you, if you're jamming out to Katy Perry as you do on your Pixel tablet.
That's me.
Yeah, you're just, rocking. And then you come home and you want to make the whole house rock, then you can tap or move that Pixel tablet close to that Google Nest Hub, and then it will transfer the music to that, and then it'll play throughout your whole home. So Katy Perry everywhere, as opposed to just on your Pixel tablet. This is 9 to 5 Google's thoughts about why they're planning to do this. Basically, ultra wideband is a chip that's in iPhones, Apple Watches, and the HomePod devices that Apple sells. Yeah. And so they have all of this sort of transfer mode because ultra wideband technology is just better at determining how far or how close and also where in space a device is in relation to another. Then I can, if I'm talking on the phone and I come home, I can tap my phone atop the HomePod, and it will transfer the call to the HomePod, and then I could talk out loud if I wanted to. I never do that because A, I'm never on the phone, and B, I don't want everybody hearing my call. There are only dogs and one other person in my house. But
Micah, that was a beautiful description. That's the best description I've ever heard. Hands down.
Thank you.
That technology. That was great. It's when back in the day they thought it was going to be a multi-gigabit per second, like Wi-Fi alternative for short-range networking, like within a house. And instead we have, do I remember the standard? Is it 802.11ax or something? There's a higher band. What actually? It's a couple different things happen. One is 5G adopted the millimeter wave band that's up at 60 gigahertz. That's where we got the ultra high band or the ultra high speed T-Mobile and other networks on 5G. And then in the house, Wi-Fi committee, the Wi-Fi group moved towards a different higher band technology. So now you can use 6 gigahertz has been rolling out. So you remember there's 2.4 gigahertz for 802.11b and G, and then N, and then we have 5 gigahertz is even bigger because there's more spectrum and they can have big wide channels. And now 6 gigahertz really started to roll out a bit in 2022. We're seeing a lot of it in 2023. So UWB is it's tangential to all of it, but it makes this neat package. You can have super high throughput at all kinds of levels, cellular in the house, and also have exact positioning with a small set of chips now in a single device.
And the other thing,
I thought UWB was all about telephony. I didn't know it was.
I guess it just depends on what, how it's being used on the iOS side, or on the, I guess, Apple side in general. It's a little bit more about the technology we talked about so far. And then also, according to 9 to 5 Google is maybe working on improving its own Finder network. So, Jeff, if you're rocking out to Katy Perry and you get home and you get distracted by a wild turkey in your backyard, and so you put down the tablet somewhere.
I can't scream because I have no tongue.
Right. Yes. And you can't scream because you have no tongue. So you go out to the back and then you come back in and you go, well, you don't say it out loud because, again, no tongue, but you think to yourself, where did I put my Katy Perry tablet, you could use that ultra wideband chip that's in it with your Google Pixel to find it. So you could actually look on your phone and say, I need to find the tablet, and you can move it about and it'll say it's 30 meters that way. I don't know how big your home is, 30 meters. And you need to go right. It's sort of a warmer, colder game, but it's better than just Bluetooth on its own. So there are a few reasons why you might want that UWB in your next Google Pixel tablet. Let's move on. We've got 3 more to hit here.
No, I'm just kidding. It's like, oh no, we've only got 3 more. Just kidding.
There's now
savoring Google.
Yes. This. I'm pulling it out of that box of chocolates we talked about earlier. This one has a nice. Is that a marshmallow filling? Anyway, YouTube now has a page that's dedicated to podcasts. So if you are looking for This Week in Google on YouTube, you can tap on that podcast tab and perhaps come across it. So it's just a quick little change where they are acknowledging the fact that a lot of people are publishing their podcasts to YouTube. If you use the Google Now launcher, I'm sad to say that it is truly, fully, completely, and absolutely shutting down. I'm a little sad about this because I don't use an Android phone super regularly, but I do have a Google Pixel, last year's model. And I always forget that the Google Now launcher is not really popular, I guess, frankly, they've been trying to sort of shutter it. And so I'm always wishing that I can use it and then it's going to have all of that functionality that it originally had. But yeah, we finally have to say truly goodbye to the Google Now launcher.
Later.
Like you're okay with that, it sounds like.
Time to move on, dude.
Yeah.
Moving on. And last but not least, Google wants to make sure that apps will actually let you delete your account. So if you want to participate in the Google Play Store and you want to be able to make your app available to folks via the Google Play Store, the company is adding a requirement that in order to publish your app, you will need to make it easy to delete an account and do that even if you still have the app on your device. So this is just, I think this is a really good move where if you've gone on, you've created an account, you've published data to that account, you've got your usage data and everything in there, and then you have to try to find, you're going through the app, you can't find anywhere, so then you have to go to the website, and then it's in white text on a white background, the place where I can actually delete my account. But when you delete your account, is my data still there? Are they going to get rid of it after a month? What's going on? I like that Google is trying to make it a little bit easier and clearer that I am truly deleting an account and getting rid of the stuff that's stored with that specific company.
Good stuff.
Whew. All right.
Isn't that a pull from what Apple was doing? Wasn't Apple doing something similar?
Similar. They've got basically nutrition labels, but for apps. And so you can go in and see how your privacy is, how your data is being used in different means. So it'll show you, here's how we're collecting your data. Here's the data we are collecting. Here's who that might be shared with. But it, just like nutrition labels, can be a little confusing. And unlike nutrition labels, where companies are required to report, as far as I understand, I don't work for the FDA, but as far as I understand, required to report everything. This is sort of a self-reporting tool, and if you kind of are just sort of, they look at you sternly to make sure that you've got it all in there. So it's not 100% what I'd want it to be. Glenn, any corrections on that?
No, I think I think Google may be going further than Apple here, and because I don't think Apple does the ecosystem and tries to enforce that an account is actually deleted off its systems. And it sounds like Google is actually going to enforce this more, I don't know, it sounds like more severely. It sounds good. I mean, I think, that's that where does your data live problem. And we're always, if we're working with other companies, they're always going to own some data we have and be able to manipulate it. So anything that makes it, that it has a big, like, I want multi-trillion-dollar companies to be on my side when it comes to privacy. Let's just put it that way.
Yes, I agree. all those multi-trillion-dollar companies and all of their lawyers with their evil twin names. Let us bring an end to the change log.
All you need is Esquire after your name to know you're evil.
There you go. That's
good point. Good point.
Even just the ESQ period is enough, and I go, oh, I'm scared. All right, moving along to our picks. Oh, there's an end. Oh my goodness! This is a fancy show.
This is you have the owner on the show. You get everything.
My God, when is my caviar and champagne coming? This is great. All right,
delivered to you via Wi-Fi.
Ooh, can you ultra wideband that over to me? All right, let's get into our picks because now I'm doing weird voices and it's
sound like
all
my
downhill
grandmother.
from here. Let's start with Ant. Ant, what is your? Okay, so it's odd because everything in the picks have different nouns next to them. It's Ant's thing, Jeff's stuff, Glenn's pick, and it was Leo's tool, so it becomes Micah's tool. Ant, what is your thing?
My thing, I have two of them. Let's go around. First one is to piggyback off of last week's where I told you all to just go out there and spend $20 on a daggum dumbbell to sit next to your desk to do some curls or some shoulder presses or something just to get moving, and got a lot of interesting messages about that. So thank you. I appreciate that you all appreciate that. So now I'm going to say level up and go get yourself a pull-up bar. I have one of these.
Oh, jeez.
And,
you couldn't leave well enough alone.
Hey, this is where everybody's trying to level up.
And then now it's
yes.
Do you even lift, bro?
Get yourself a pull-up bar. I have two of the ones that you put inside of the door, and I have busted door frames because I'm apparently too heavy for them. So if you're
powerful,
someone that's about as heavy as I am, you might want to get a bar like this. This one is only $100. They make some that are way more expensive, but you don't have to get those. Just get one of these, and you can do pull-ups, you can do dips, you can do some push-ups on them. Either way, just
like vertical push-ups?
No, down at the bottom has some handles, and you just get down there to do pull-ups to get a deeper stretch at the bottom of your push-up.
I was excited about an easier push-up.
No. Not Ant.
There is
no thing as easier. The floor is not good enough for Ant.
No such thing. No such thing. But yeah, get yourself one of those racks there. And then lastly, mine was I needed a laugh. It's just been a little hectic here for me outside of work, and every now and then I just needed a laugh, and I found a good one from Mr. Fred here at the Dry Bar, Fred Klett. And this one, I also put it up here because it made me think about Mr. Jarvis. So if you can, if the audio comes up, Mr. Benito, you got the audio for it? I think he'd appreciate it.
Up to you. Oh, you're lucky you get to work on cruise ships. However, for what I do, that's not true all the time. This cruise that I was working on, there was mostly Germans in the audience. Germans in the audience. And as we all know, the Germans are a jovial group. This is my impression of a German gut laughing. Ha! And they weren't really laughing. I finally looked at a guy and said, "Why are you laughing?" He said, "Ich verstande das nicht." After the show, I found the international hostess and asked her, "What does Ich verstande das nicht mean?" She said, "I do not understand." I said, "Ich verstande."
Oh no.
But I thought that Mr. Jarvis would enjoy that. This is a good one. He's a great comedian on Dry Bar YouTube channel, but he does a lot of other stuff. But that's Fred Klett.
I'll tell you a funny thing, which is when I was in Berlin last November, and I happened via Twitter, the evil Twitter, of course, there's a German TV writer and comedy writer I've met there, and I'm like, hey, you want to get together? And he took me to have he said it's the best apple strudel in the world, and it was. So we had apple strudel at a style cafe in Berlin. It's like Einstein Cafe.
Einstein. Oh yes, okay.
Yeah. So you even do that. So. And he's a comedy writer. I'm like, tell me about comedy in Germany. And he said, well, we don't really have a tradition of it. That's kind of the whole joke. Yeah. But it's difficult. They don't have an improv tradition. So he has been part of a generation. He's in his, I think, maybe late 30s now, early 40s. He's been part of a generation. It's literally introducing the notion of humor to Germany that's not like mordant or deep or very dry. So just like he got a grant to go and study improv in LA. I mean, it's really amazing.
Wow.
So
That's actually really cool.
Imagine that helping bring humor to Germany.
Nice.
That's a tall order, apparently.
It is.
All right, let's go to Jeff.
Oh, what do we do today? I already gave up my coat. Okay, so companies that young people want to work for.
Oh.
Gen Z. Well, who guess what's the number one company people want to work for? Young
The tick, the talk.
The Taco Bell.
YouTube.
Well, we had a story about Taco Bell on the rundown, but no, not Taco Bell.
YouTube.
Nope.
Oh, YouTube's
Well,
a
close.
good guess.
Google.
In and out.
Oh, Google then.
Google still.
Really? Google?
Chipotle.
16%
Wow.
for Google. Federal
Holy cow.
government 6.
Oh, this is Gen Z. Okay.
Gen Z, young people.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That is awesome.
Maybe when they hear they have to use Chromebooks and they don't have M&Ms all over the place, maybe that'll change.
It's gonna change.
Yeah, they've got all those movies that make them think that Google's going to have like slides and ball pits and stuff maybe. But I love that federal government was so high. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Has that
Apple
changed?
5%, so Google 16%, federal government 6%, Apple 5%. Let's see, going down here. I guess we got Disney 2.2,
Good. I thought the
Amazon
federal government had
2.
been so demonized. That's amazing.
They want to
NASA
fix it.
2.1.
Yeah, good. Great. Get youthful people. Let the
But at the
world
same
crush them
time,
inside the government.
you may want to go work for those companies, but it may not last long because there's another story here also from Axios on the layoffs they've been doing.
Oh, yeah.
And so Amazon is the biggest layoffs with 27,000. Meta next biggest with 21,000. But interestingly, so Amazon's layoffs are less than 10% of the company. Little old Twitter has laid off 33.7 thousand, but that's half the company.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I see the chart now. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Google 12,000, Salesforce 9,000, Dell 6.7 thousand, Microsoft 10,000, Meta 21,000, and Twitter 3.7 thousand. But most of the company.
Friend of the show, Mr. Richard Hay. It was official for him just a few days ago, March 31st, in his time at Google. So he's officially out looking for work now.
That's too bad.
But that's my happy, jolly numbers.
Well, I like the first
thanks.
part of that. I was really inspired that the kids wanted to work for the federal government. But we can't forget that, yeah, people are, unfortunately.
I was going to end with the puffy keyboard coat here. It was a nice way to go out, but I contributed it.
You did.
To the flow of the show.
You did. And so don't forget the puffy keyboard coat. I can't wait for Glenn to send me mine so I can spell out the Macarena. I don't know why, Glenn. I just feel like you're the one that's going to make it because you.
Oh, I'm going to
keyboard expert.
Yeah.
make this happen.
On it.
Inflatable.
On it.
That's pretty great. It's pretty great.
Moving along now to Glenn's pick.
I've got this great pull-up bar that you can see here. And, oh, my camera's glitching. There we go. No, I'm sorry. It's a tripod attachment. You all know what it looks like. Tripod extender. Anyway, no, I've got I wanted to start. I've got two things. One is an object, but I'll start with the funnier one, which is family is going to be able to cash in our miles and go to Europe for a couple weeks in June. Very excited about these. Trip delayed since 2020. Of course, we were going to go in June or July 2020. Now it's time. And we hit that window where we could actually book flights with miles that weren't horrible. Something opened up and we grabbed it. So looking for rentals in London and trying to find something that's affordable. And there's 4 of us and the kids are teens, so they want their own beds now. You can't throw them like little kids in the same bed overnight, whatever. And so looking around and I'm like, oh, this looks like a good rental. And there's a review. Oh, review in French. So it's an international, like people have stayed from around the world. French, it's such a beautiful language. Excuse my French. Logement très sale et pas entretenu. Présence des insectes vivants dans la cuisine or dans le réfrigérateur. And I'm like, presence of living insects in the food in the refrigerator, also dead ones. Okay.
Oh.
So perhaps the beautiful language informed me through translation that perhaps that rental is not the one I want to choose. So thank you, Airbnb, for providing translation services when you're looking.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So avoided. My actual pick is I see, and I don't want to steal your thunder because I see, Micah, you have a carabiner on your list, but it prompted me to remind myself to recommend this. It's a great item from Raptic. I was reviewing a huge number of Apple AirTags, AirTag holders last year. I'm still working my way through them. And this one was really impressive because I took up lockpicking, as many people did during the pandemic, only of our own stuff, not breaking into other people's houses.
Right.
And I have an extensive kit now, and I can pick a number of kinds of locks, still working on others. Combination locks are often very poorly made and easy to pick. So this design, it's incredibly ruggedized metal construction. You slip the AirTag in there, and it's got a combination lock that you can attach to luggage or something else, and like lock up right. And it's a 3-digit combination, which is unfortunate because you could sit there and in a matter of minutes you could run through 1,000 combinations. But it takes time and focus. I have tried using every technique I've watched on YouTube and that have worked on other combination locks I have in my possession, including master lock locks that sell for $40 or $50 a piece, all of which it's just you whip there, you spin the things, you're great, right? I cannot crack this lock. So even though it's 3 digits, it's pretty great. Can't get anything into the slots, any of the tools, can't crack it by hand, by feel. So if you're looking for a simple but well-made, rugged AirTag protecting holder, the only way someone can get the AirTag out is they have to sit there and run through all the combinations, or they have to take a hammer and a chisel and like pound it out of that holder, which is made with polycarbonate plastic. So I really like this thing. It's particularly for the cases in which you want your AirTag to be more visible. There's a lot of products that hide an AirTag, but if you want to give people the intent, hey, I'm tracking this, I know where it's at, then this is I really like this item.
Yeah, that's cool. And it looks nice and sturdy, which is nice. My tool, as that is what my noun says, is it's called Night Eyes Key Rack, and I've had these for quite some time. And every time I've brought them up, people are like, "Wow!" So it's a little key rack that you put all of these tiny little sort of S carabiner clips on, and so each one of your there we go, this way. There we go. Each one of the items that you put on there can be clipped on using the carabiner clip, and then I've also got like an open spot here. This little tool is made by Night Eyes as well, and it's a multi-tool that has Phillips and flathead. It's a bottle opener. It's got a little ruler on there. And so everything just kind of...
Looks like a saw to get out of jail with.
Yeah, exactly. That as well. I've got my lock picking tool. No, I don't. And so each of these just kind of sits on here nicely, but anytime I want to, I can just very easily unclip something and use that alone. I am one of those paranoid people who doesn't like to have a bunch of stuff hanging on my keys when I'm driving because there was the one car company where, so you all know what I'm talking about, but for folks who don't know, I don't remember which make it was, but essentially if your knee bumped the keys just right, it would turn your car off. So you could be on the highway and have your car get turned off and then you get into a car accident. And so I love to be able to just unclip that very quickly and use the key as I need to and then clip it back on after I'm done. So that is Night Eyes. And Night Eyes makes a lot of different products. They've got stuff for like pets. They've got these easy little clips that are for your keys. They've got some that lock as well, so you can get the little S clips that there's actually a little metal spot in the middle that kind of turns and locks the clips closed. And then they make LED lights, all sorts of things that are just keychain focused. And I have the last one I had for years and years and years, and I finally replaced it with new ones because they had just worn out after, I don't know, like 8-9 years. So they last a long time as well. So that is my tool pick.
That's pretty cool.
Comfortable for the pets to be hanging from the
yeah, when I clip my dog onto the keychain. Oh Lord have mercy.
Sorry, it was the picture in my head. I know it's not right.
No, but it is a picture. Folks, that brings us to the end of this episode of This Week in Google. Let's go down the line and have everybody mention where they can be found, if they've got anything to pitch, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll start with you, Ant Pruitt, Twit host and Club Twit community manager. What would you like to promote this week?
First, I'd like to promote Miss Stacy's book club, part of Club Twit. that is coming up on, at the time of this recording, Thursday, April the 6th. I'm going to talk about Sea of Tranquility. Ooh. Very, very, very interesting book. With I'm sure we're going to have an interesting talk about that. So if you want to join that chat and talk or what have you, become a member of Club Twit and join in on the discussion. But also check out my show, Hands On Photography, twit.tv/HOP. Having a lot of fun creating shows for everybody to help get better in the world of photography and post-processing.
Beautiful. Special guest, technology journalist and print historian Glenn Fleischman. Thank you for your time today. Where can folks find you online, and what would you like to promote?
Well, in honor of the 1-year anniversary of me registering Glenn.fun, in order to make it easier for people to find me when I was on this show, they can find me at Glenn.fun, GLENN.FUN.
That's
and I just wanted something short and sweet that I could say aloud that people might remember or be able to type in. But I'm active on Mastodon, which is a happy, wonderful place, using the Twit server, twit.social. And you can find me there at Glenn F. That's Glenn with 2 N's. I'm currently working on a lot of historical research, reading, looking at old things. About to go to the Billy Ireland Comic Library and Museum at the Ohio State University for an event on April 22nd, free afternoon event. For the many watchers and listeners who are in the Ohio area, come to Columbus on April 22nd.
You'd be surprised.
Printing. Yeah, well, hey, come and say hi. Should be a lot of fun, but that's where I'm going to be. I'll be physically there that one day and virtually Glenn.fun.
All right. And the Leonard Tao Professor for Journalistic Innovation at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York, and the director of the Tao Knight Center for Entrepreneurial Journalism at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at the City University of New York. It is Jeff Jarvis. Thank you so much, Jeff Jarvis.
Hey,
Where?
You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. How can people find you online, and what would you?
Well, I'm gonna every show from now I'm gonna plug the book. So the book's coming out in June. So the Gutenberg parenthesis. If you go to gutenbergparenthesis.com, you can pre-order it today at a discount.
Ooh.
Bloomsbury has it for, I think, 10% off.
Love that cover.
And I have to say, if I'm judging books by their covers, you have figured it out, my friend, because both of these books are...
Snyder did.
Ooh.
Bloomsbury's been a very good publisher to work with. I've been happy.
If we're lucky, Jeff and I will be on stage together in early July. Details to come, talking about he and I and some other type and printing related people.
Geeking out.
See if it all works out. It'd be great.
And I'd also like to give a special thanks to Jexx, Javros, Axe Prowleth, Mordak Serpent, and Gast Fiendish Claw, a.k.a. Ghoul Fleshman, for their time today.
In a parallel universe.
We're all ready for Halloween now.
Goodbye, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this episode of This Week in Google. I do want to mention that if you would like to subscribe to the show, if you're somehow listening to it and it's not because it's downloaded to your podcast app of choice, well, the way that you can get this show every week is by going to twit.tv/twig or TWIG. There you will see a webpage where you can subscribe to the show in audio or video format, and you just choose your podcast provider. If it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Pocket Casts. I mean, we try to be in all the places so that you can get the show. We've got that plain old RSS feed for the audio and video versions of the show, and we'd love to have you become a follower or a subscriber, depending on what service you're using. You can also tune in live to watch the show at twit.tv/live every Wednesday, starting at round about 2 p.m. Pacific time. And I should mention Club Twit at twit.tv/club Twit. Join the club, and you can get every single one of Twitch shows ad-free. It's all the content, none of the ads, because you, in effect, are supporting the show by subscribing for starting at $7 a month or $84 a year. You also get access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show, special events. All of that gets published in that special bonus feed. And you get access to the members-only Discord, where you can chat with fellow Club Twit members and also those of us here at Twit. That's a fun place to hang out. Lots of animated images get strewn about, and you can have a great time. Again, all all starting at $7 a month, $84 a year. If you'd like, you can choose to up your monthly subscription. We continue to try to make the club more valuable by introducing new shows and new special features. Some of those include the Untitled Linux Show, which is a show all about Linux, as you probably guessed. You can also check out Paul Thurrott's Hands on Windows program, which is a short format show all about Windows, making the most of your Windows PC, and my show, Hands on Mac, which is a show about using your Mac, but also about using your iPhone, your iPad, all of that stuff. I've got short format tips and tricks for all of those devices. And last, but certainly not least, for now, at the very least, is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson. He's got the jolliest laugh in the business, and he is incredible when it comes to home theater knowledge. So if you are looking to get inspired or looking to up your home theater game, you definitely want to join the club and check out that show. All of that great stuff, part of the club, twit.tv/clubtwit. Please check it out. And now I'm officially, truly, really saying goodbye and thank you for joining us for this episode of This Week in Google.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.